Today is Monday, December 5th, 2022. All of our council members are currently present. Town clerk, town manager. So far, I do not see our attorney yet, but I'm guessing there he is. Come on in, John. Hey, John. If everyone would please rise for the invocation and the pledge, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
We are thankful for this day that you have given us, for its blessings, its opportunities, its challenges. May we appreciate and use each day that is given to us. We pray for strength and guidance for each day as it comes, for each day's duties, for each day's difficulties. May we be challenged to give our best always, and may we be assured of your presence with us. Amen.
We got approval of the final agenda. Is there a motion to approve the final agenda?
So moved.
All second. Any discussion? Just one. I'm gonna add. We've got some folks from FDOT here. We're gonna add those guys in under our. We're gonna add those guys in after the advisory committee items and reports. We got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Now we got public comment. Clerk, we got anybody wanting to speak?
Have nobody signed up this morning?
Does anyone out there want to speak? Yes, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us to say a few words.
Please state your name for the record.
Dave Lawrence, 612 Estero Boulevard. We just wanted to, I guess, get the kind of conversation started. Myself and a few other residents on the island, quite a few dozens of other residents on the island, have found out in the permit processing, or applying for the permits, that the lots that we currently have been deemed unbuildable, because they are non-conforming lots that we've owned. We've owned ours for almost 25 years. Catherine's been a resident here longer than that, over 30 years. Larry's in the same situation. My wife and I were in the process of becoming full-time residents. We've been down here for over 30 years. We have a seasonal business up north and a seasonal business we're involved in down here. So we've gone back and forth. During the process, we found out a year ago that the town of Fort Myers took the lots that were our size and made them non-conforming lots, meaning that they're not 45 or 40 feet by 75 feet. They're 50 by 60 square, or almost square lots. The square footage is the same, but our dimensions don't match. And so I was advised by one of the planners that our lots are unbuildable and there's nothing we can do. And it's really unfair. We weren't informed about that in any manner that the ordinance was going to, and they say, oh no, we're not aware of any ordinance change or anything like that, and they're trying to market these lots for sale. And it kind of goes against the vibe what the town has come up with and the unity of the town, and what they're trying to do as far as keep the quaintness, keep the small character of the island, not make it another Naples or an East Coast, by taking away the small cottages on the island. And you know, we're getting forced, and the values, the money we've put in over the years, there's some things that need to be addressed, I think, and looked at from this ordinance change. You look like you've got a question. No, go ahead. All set.
Finish up your. If you're finished, we'll touch on it here in just a second.
Okay. Yeah. And again, I just want to see if there's. You know, if there's, the square footage is the same of our lot as the new dimensions, it's just the layout of the lot is different. And I think it needs to be addressed because more and more people are finding out. There was some posting on social media about this, and things are starting to roll, and I'm afraid it's going to affect a lot of residents on the island. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I'll go, we normally don't do it, but I'll touch on it. The LPA will be discussing this at their meeting, specifically these things that you're talking about. I would suggest that you go there and provide at
Tomorrow?
tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, we're
This
planning
week.
on that, yeah.
Okay, so that's going to be the only thing that they're discussing, setbacks and
Okay.
percentages and stuff like that. So make sure you attend that.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, just for further clarification, the LPA meeting, for anyone else who might be listening, because you asked some very good questions, is tomorrow at this very same place at 10 a.m.
Yep.
And these issues are going to be considered, and I think some of the LPA folks, and we'll talk about this later, a lot of the broader issues will also be considered by the LPA. So it's a great place to give your input, and they'll be making recommendations to the town council, which we will be listening to very closely. So
Okay.
your time will be well spent
right.
sharing their thoughts with the LPA tomorrow.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you for all
Yes,
your
sir. Anyone else care to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Catherine Butler, Larry and Dave's neighbor, and Denise. And I didn't know if you need the land development code or sections or anything like that. The dimensions were changed June 7th of 2021, and that was the ordinance 21-04, and it was amendment to the land development code, section 34, 3273, and 34268. Chapter 34 discusses zoning districts, design standards, and nonconformities. So how would we have known about a change that took place to our homes that we've owned for decades? I don't understand how something like that could be passed without our knowledge. So tomorrow that'll be addressed as opposed to this setting? Is that kind of, okay. Okay, great. We'll see you then tomorrow as well. Do you have something else?
Comment period is for us to receive public comment. So,
Not true. Okay, I gotcha.
but we're happy. We want to make
First
sure
meeting.
we want to make sure you get your questions answered. But at the same time, yeah, if you bring all that information tomorrow to the LPA
Perfect.
meeting, you'll be well served by doing that.
Perfect.
So we appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
So
Catherine.
just to add my name to the record, I'm Lawrence Black. I'm the owner of a lot at 614 Estero Boulevard since 2006. And we'd like to rebuild the lot, and have discovered that the lot is non-conforming and hence non-buildable. So it's a big problem. And we'll look forward to attending the meeting tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, but since there's three people here with these concerns, those two gentlemen in the back corner, I don't want to put them on the spot, but if you have a moment to pull them aside, either during or after our meeting, I think you might get some good information from both Jason and Jason. There are two Jasons back there in the corner. So they may not be able to do it now, but certainly after the meeting you might want to catch them, and I think they'd be a good resource for more granular subject matter expert type responses to your very, very good questions.
Anyone else care to speak? Seeing no one else, we'll close public comment. Local achievements and recognitions. Vice Mayor Adderholt.
In the interest of time, I'll be brief, but I've been reticent on doing these only because there have just been so many actions on this island post-hurricane of generosity, neighbor helping neighbor, donations, kindness, that I hate to single anything out because I don't want to diminish those acts that are going unseen by many. If we have the liberty and the luxury and the benefit of being on the council here, we hear a lot of the things that are going on around this island and the acts of kindness. Some of them random acts of kindness. It's so overwhelming. I just wanted to say two things then, because I've passed on this for the last few weeks. And it's not that there's not a lot of things to recognize. There certainly are, but there's so much going on. There's so many people helping each other. As I look at all of that, one thing I would just say in summation is there's two things that I see going on, aside from all these tremendous acts of kindness to help others during this difficult time. I see we were just able to move back onto the island this weekend, not to our original place, but to a temporary place. I'm hoping more and more people will be able to do that. There's more and more places opening up. It's kind of tough right now to find a place, but they're slowly but surely they're opening up. But one of the things I've noticed, we were on the island for the storm and for 4 days after the storm, and then went to with my aunt and my wife's aunt and uncle let us stay there for a couple months, and now we're back. And we've been back obviously and talking to a lot of folks, and I see two things. I see I see this amazing, and this is what I want to commend, this amazing pioneer spirit on this island, particularly in the people that live here on this island. Since the storm, there have been people that have been here since the storm. No power, no water, no wastewater, no internet, and just been surviving almost like the pioneer days, and an amazing acts of heroism and hard work and just struggle as they try to restore their properties. And many of them didn't have a place to go. Others have since procured campers and are living in a very rustic setting. And again, many without power. There's this amazing, we use this term resiliency on our shirts and so forth, and FMB strong. But you walk through some of these neighborhoods and you see some of these people who've been down here for the last month, some since the storm, braving all the various challenges to restore their place on the island. And that sense of pioneerism is really amazing. And I commend these people. And I encourage them to stay encouraged because it's been tough, I'm sure. And then second of all, I'd like to commend, in a general sense, the business community, both on and off the island. This sense of entrepreneurship. Everybody's out there looking to how to restart their business, how to change their business model, how to improve their property, how to restore their property, how to find the funds to make all this possible, how to marshal new venture capital to come to the island. Clever and innovative things to do to move this island forward in a very interesting way. Just the spirit of entrepreneurship that makes this country great. And you see it amongst our business community in amazing ways. And I just want to commend all our businesses that have already returned, that are in the process of returning, or are thinking about a new and interesting business opportunity. So that would be my folks I want to commend today. And of course, if I'm going to be specific, I happen to be part of this, just briefly, part of the beach cleanup on Sunday. All the 150 people that worked the south end, I think there was 100 and some that did the north end earlier. This beach cleanup piece, hopefully there'll be more of them, because there's so many tiny little particles that we need help to pick up, and you almost need to do it by hand. And I just wanted to thank all those folks who are doing that, and also encourage them to keep doing it. And if you're walking along the beach, bring a bag with you and pick anything up you see, because the beach is getting much better very quickly, but we still have a little work to do, and just wanted to thank everybody involved. Thank you.
Sir, Mr. Veach?
Yeah, I would definitely talk to the Keep Lee County Beautiful. They've done a great job. And just the contributions from people, because the 100 people that signed up for the first, that was fully subscribed. That's all the room they had parking for, and was fully subscribed. The 150 people for the one on Saturday was also fully subscribed. I talked to a lot of people who are out there. There were some locals, there were people with interest, but a lot of people just are from somewhere else and they vacation on the beach and they care. It made a huge difference. It's noticeable. There was so much debris that was pulled out of difficult to find spots that the equipment can't get, and pulled out so it can be hauled away. I do understand there will be more. There are some corporate groups that are coming and doing some cleanups. There will be more public ones. We're going to target certain parts of the beach that didn't get covered so far and get back into some of the areas we were. There are always some difficulties with being in the mangroves and the water. There's some trash. It's very, very hard to get to, but we'll work towards that. But I think, yeah, just congratulations to the people who showed up for that. It was amazingly productive. People were pulling out a lot of garbage, and you could tell where they were, where they had been. It was just so, it was clearly a very productive venture. The other thing I'd like to point out is I'm really tickled at the whole poinsettia tree and the way that grew organically. That people wanted a sense of normalcy, and so people just took it on themselves, start bringing these plants and putting them in the spot where they were, and it grew, and now we have our tree back as like a symbol of recovery and normalcy coming back to the island.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Woodson?
Well, watching my social media this weekend, this was not the weekend to be gone. I mean, there were so many things that happened, and it was so exciting to see. And, you know, the poinsettia tree, the gathering for the Kids Foundation, I mean, it just felt like home again, and I cannot thank all the organizers enough for doing all this. I know Dan and the town were very involved in the tree and getting the whole framework put back together. The beach cleanup, I mean, I was just asking, when's the next one? But I just want to commend this whole town for the spirit and the drive and the attitude and the rebuild.
Getting up, taking care of themselves, moving forward each day. Thank you for doing that. Not only for taking care of yourselves, but you're taking care of each other as well. I saw that, Karen alluded to it, over on Saturday night at Times Square with the toy drive for the Beach Kids Foundation, and just it was amazing and great to be a part of. Like Mr. Adderholt said, I'd like to thank our business owners as well for those working hard every day, those that are open, and those that are working hard to get open. We appreciate you. Also, the people across the country, and Beach Talk Radio has learned my role in this government, and I appreciate everything. Town Clerk Amy, thank you for being here today. I appreciate you as well. And you also, all of you sitting up here with me. I appreciate and respect you all. Bill, thanks for what you did with the beach cleanup. Vice Mayor Adderholt, I got a lot of good comments on Saturday for your key questions with key staffers. I think it's a great thing. And Mayor Allers, I don't know when you find time to sleep, because you are just one busy man, and I thank you for everything you're doing, especially with this now Mondays with the mayor, communicating with people, answering questions. It's just been amazing to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Most of my things are covered. I just wanted to add to the poinsettia tree thing. I just want to thank Jason Freeman and the Public Works staff. They brought this all together. As Councilor Veach said, it's amazing how things in the background are happening and people don't know about it, and then organically things start happening, the trees just start showing up. So it came together really well. Thanks to the help of an anonymous family, they choose to be anonymous, that donated all 400 of those poinsettia trees to the town. So I figured it was the least that we could do, and Jason and his team stepped up to find the frame, make sure it was stable, get it up. Joe Orlandini, I want to thank him for, at the last minute, putting up a palm tree to be able to put the Christmas tree or the poinsettia tree around. So it's that kind of community spirit that makes us who we are. I also want to thank Mr. John Ward, who we're going to hear from here in just a minute. He has come in from Clay County. He is the emergency management director up there. He's been down here doing all the dirty work for us. We give him a task, he goes out and gets it done. He's got contacts with the state. He's got contacts with people that he's put in place to help the new town manager and myself get caught up to speed as fast as we can. Tomorrow is going to be his last day. As he says, it's going to be wheels up back to Jacksonville. So thank you, sir, for your input and your time and guiding us in the right direction. Other than that, we'll move on to, we have some folks here from FDOT that were going to give us a base of the bridge information. Give us just a second. We'll get you a microphone up here.
This is Victoria Peters, and I'm here on behalf of FDOT. I'm your community liaison in the area, and I'm here to introduce Mr. Chris Spees. He is our project manager for the Matanzas Pass Bridge, and also his supervisor, Sean Pugh, is here as well. He's just going to give an update to the new council members, as well as give a brief update about the property transfer occurring in the Seafarers area. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Good morning, everybody. Again, Chris Spees with Atkins, representing FDOT. Just here to give a brief update on the project, a little bit of an overview. The SR 865 Matanzas Pass project is an operational and safety improvement project, basically from Buttonwood Prescott onto the island. The Seafarers intersection component was added to this project for some improvements on the island itself. And as part of that, and I'll get into that in a second, is the need for the some parcels on the island to be able to, for FDOT to facilitate construction of those improvements. Currently, where we stand right now with the project, we're finishing up phase 4, and our final production date is a week from today. So we're trying to tie up some of the last ticket items on the agenda. One of those items that we have to accommodate for is right-of-way certification. And basically what our right-of-way team is looking for is just a letter or an email from the town, even the town manager, basically just saying that they're willing to move forward with the property transfer with Lee County, basically to assist in facilitating the construction of the Seafarers Interchange improvements. So, yes, sir.
Now, is that property you said being transferred to Lee County?
I'm sorry, what?
The property you're referring to? Did you say it was going to be transferred to Lee County or to the state?
That's my understanding, is going to be transferred to Lee County. It's a small parcel at the intersection of 5th and San Carlos.
Now, is that in the state or the county portion of the roadway? Because it changes right around there, doesn't it?
Right. It will. There's another piece of the puzzle where there's going to be an adjustment with the county in regards to that where the state facility ends. So that will be part of the county facility after this project is complete.
All right. Now, my understanding too, in talking with our previous town manager, that the town was going to get some funding to help with the roadway at Times Square, and I thought that was tied in with this property. Are you familiar with that?
I know there was some discussion about that, about a grant, I think, that was in conversations. I'd have to take that back and talk with our leadership about where that is, because it's not a part of this project.
Okay. I'd be interested to know, because, of course, the schedule of Times Square is out the window now. So I want to make sure that if there's some value that the town was going to get for exchange for that property, that we do get that value somewhere, that we can help with our recovery.
Jason, you got something you want to add? It looks like you're...
Good morning, everybody. Jason Freeman, Public Works Director, for the record. Just want to brief everybody. So this is at Ocean Jewels property that was on the corner there where the sheriff's office, I think, had the community outreach center trailer for a little bit. Back in 2021, the council passed a resolution which accepted from TPI that property, and now we're just looking at making sure that we're continuing with this project. I know FDOT is getting ready to continue on and get the procurement process going for that redesign of the foot of the bridge. So this is just an element on top of that. So we just want to make sure the new council's briefed on it, as well as the manager, and see what we need to do to continue with this project.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Just a couple questions. First of all, thank you for being here. I know it takes time to get out here, and I appreciate you keeping us informed. As you obviously know, a lot has changed since we all last chatted together, and the island is going through another transformation. So your project becomes all the more critical, and the timing of your project is critical as well. So the quicker we can get started, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But I wanted to throw out, because I don't think the public fully appreciates sometimes we can't, as members of the council, we can't talk to each other except for in these types of meetings because of the sunshine rules. So, and I'm just speaking on my behalf as an individual counselor, but I think it's important that you all hear this, because this is what's a lot of things that are being discussed on the island. I'd like my colleagues to hear this too. I've been having a number of conversations with some of the interested parties in the areas that you're talking about working in on the foot of the bridge. And there seems to be, and I'm very encouraged by this, there seems to be some real strong interest in potentially, it's all very in the discussion phase, of having a pedestrian walkover from the Margaritaville Plaza area, which is their second floor, over to the Times Square area. That, I can't tell you how critical that would be. Not only from a business standpoint, there would be a synergy between those two properties, but more importantly, at least from my perspective, we have, as you all know, a tremendous traffic challenge on our island. And if we could have people walking from the Margaritaville over to Times Square in a pedestrian overpass, coupled with the other pedestrian overpass that Margaritaville has, it could really help that traffic flow much more naturally and allow the pedestrians to go over the traffic as opposed to through stoplights and crosswalks, etc. So I want you to, as you plan, and I know you all have a very definitive plan in place, and it's gone through a lot of steps, and it's excellent. We're very thankful for it. Is just keep a flexible mindset as to how that could be accommodated as we go forward. I'm not saying you would necessarily have to have a formal role, but I think it would impact your project potentially, and hopefully you'll be able to embrace it and figure out a way to incorporate it. Again, nothing's been announced. It's very preliminary, but there's a lot of discussion about it, and I think it could be really helpful to our island, particularly when it comes to traffic flow. We had a lot of discussions as you all went through the process with us as to how we could have more pedestrians going over or under the traffic, and we weren't able to resolve that at the time, but because of the hurricane, we might have an opportunity here to do that pedestrian overpass where I just talked about. So just more of an FYI at this point. It may or may not happen, but if the discussions continue to mature, I just wanted you to be aware of it and see if you guys could work with us to see if we could help all the interested parties make it possible. So just wanted to say that. And then second of all, just for the public here and for the new members, could you provide some kind of a timeline as to when we will see action on the ground with respect to this project, a project that's extremely welcome here on our island?
Mobilization, we would anticipate sometime in, I think, the June or July timeframe that you should start seeing some activity start to begin. We have been coordinating with TPI in regards to the delay that they've incurred because of the storm. So we're going to try and make sure that we allocate them the space and time needed to wrap their activities up, whereas we can do some of the project work off islands first and then stage it properly so we don't get in each other's way.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Chris and Jason, can you guys facilitate that letter or maybe talk to him offline about what he needs to be able to get that transfer taken care of? You need that done today, I would assume, or sometime soon?
Yes.
So we just wanted to make sure that council's in favor of moving forward with the project, and we'll sign the letter committing the property to the project if that's the will of the council.
Is there a consensus of the council to move forward with that project?
Consent.
Yes.
I would agree, but with the caveat that if there is a grant possibility, that we don't want to just leave that grant could be very useful in our redevelopment.
Anybody else have any questions for Chris?
Just for clarity, Chris, I know there was a lot of variability about the proposed bridge. I think just for recollection now, it was decided that we could not put a cantilever on the bridge because it reduced the life of the bridge.
That's correct.
All right.
Yeah.
Can I speak?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to just clarify. I was involved with the programming pavers. We call it the Times Square pavers, also with Jason. And so that project isn't really tied into this project, but that project is slated to begin in our fiscal year of 24, which is like the end of calendar year, not the end of calendar year, but it sits in calendar year of 23. It'll start when you folks are ready to go in 24. So that project was bumped out from 23 to 24, but it is to start in 24, but is not tied to Chris and Sean's project, which is the Matanzas project. So they're two separate projects. And I can work, and I will work with Jason with that as well. And any other programming you desire.
Right. I think that loops into Councilor Veach, your question. That was the potential grant funding that we're going to use for those pavers down there. That's what we're working with Victoria and FDOT on to continue and see what we can do with that project.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Mr. Woodson, you have any questions?
What is your last name?
Spees.
Can you spell it?
S-P-E-E-S-E.
Thank you. That's all. Thanks.
No problem.
Mr. King, any question for Chris? Mr. Vice Mayor, you okay? Thank you, Chris. Thank you guys for coming out and give us that update.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Now we're going to move on to the administrative agenda. Item A is the State Personnel John Ward briefing. John?
Good morning, everybody. Through the mayor, council, manager, staff, and all our partners and residents that are here. First, I'd like to say I've spent the last 6 weeks here on and off. It's been phenomenal, the welcoming and the partnerships you guys all have in this community. Day to day, I'm the Director of Emergency Management, as he stated, in Clay County, Florida. During disaster times in Florida or anywhere throughout the Southeast, I run the incident management team. I say all that to say this has probably been one of the most impressive teamworks that I've seen within both the community, the employees, the partnerships of all the agents. I'm going to come give a brief, and then we want to talk about the projects and kind of where you're at with what's called your damage inventory, which will lead into the next agenda item that we're going to speak about. So obviously, September 28th, I'm trying not to talk so loud. September 28th was life-changing for many folks here in Southwest Florida, and specifically here on Fort Myers Beach. Ian was the 5th most powerful storm in the United States history. Next to Hurricane Katrina, which unfortunately I was responded to also. On October 1st, you all had over 1,300 fire rescue, law enforcement, state, local responders here assisting you in that response. The response was overwhelming. We got a lot of teams that stood up very early on, knowing that it was going to be catastrophic initially for the Tampa Bay area, and then when it shifted, we instantly shifted a lot of the assets south to come into here. You had more than 30 fire, EMS, police, governmental agencies that were here physically on the island. I know many of them were button seats in here. It was very crowded at times, and I think many of you all had an opportunity to come in and see that. You guys had over 2,500 rescues here on the island. That's a lot. You guys have 3,200 structures on Fort Myers Beach. Just over 2,200 have light to moderate damage. Over 900 are destroyed. That being said, you guys seen probably one of the more impressive storm surges of varying levels of 8 to 18 feet here on the island is what was measured off the coast. So that being said, your staff, since we've been here, your town staff, although you have, I think it's 90 plus employees, they've been phenomenal since day one here. They've been out working their tails off, doing a multitude of both in their respective verticals and assisting in other verticals. Obviously you had a lot of road repairs, a lot of road clearing, that type thing. Hundreds of utility repairs. I don't think we can go every other day without seeing a pop-up broken water line or something like that from our debris partners, which we spoke with. Your building officials have processed over 2,700 building applications, thousands in residential and commercial building assessments. You see a lot of red tags, yellow tags on the front of the buildings. That was in partnership with Army Corps of Engineers and your staff out assessing those buildings out of safety aspects for your community. Your Parks and Rec on a monthly basis give 20,000 plus bags of ice, 6,100 cases of water, and so far they've had over 12,250 resident contacts. Residents just coming up asking questions. It could be, how do I get a hold of FEMA? Asking about building permits or whatever. But right now we have logged over 12,500 resident contacts of folks, and some of them may be coming back and asking additional questions. So that being said, I just kind of wanted to highlight that. As the mayor said, I do leave tomorrow. We'll be coming back over the next couple of weeks, assisting the town in some of the administrative things until we award the contract for the recovery contractor. But I just wanted to take this time and really say what a phenomenal job that your team has done, without a doubt, hands down. So I just want to talk a real quick summary of the projects where we're at. Tidal Basin is your current recovery contractor. They're on 30-day increment contracts, kind of on an emergency procurement contract. So FEMA, for those, and my apologies if I slip up, I know Mayor Dan has been sitting next to me. He's been hearing all my acronyms, so he's been trying to keep me in check on a lot of these.
John, I'm going to stop you. Just for the public that's watching, you mentioned Tidal Basin is our current contractor.
Yes.
Just for the public's benefit. What are they doing for the town? What's their role?
My apologies. So at this point, you're in recovery mode. So you want to be gathering documents, making sure your procurements are done correctly. So, because now what they're going to do, and that's what I was getting ready to list out here, sir, is they're going to prepare projects that are going to be submitted to our state and FEMA partners for your reimbursement. Obviously, there's a lot of money on the table for this, and we want to make sure and cross the T's, dot the I's, so we can get all our money back as much as possible. So this was an emergency procurement contract, and this emergency procurement is done in 30-day increments. But going on to the next agenda item, we really need to look at getting a recovery contractor that essentially you guys are going to be married to for the next 5 years, 6 years, that's going to be helping you with mitigation, various projects. There's going to be multitude of grant programs that are available over the next couple years. So it's really going to make sure that the town of Fort Myers Beach has the ability to take advantage of this funding that's going to be coming available, but then also doing it appropriately also. I mean, fortunately, you guys don't do this on a regular basis, so it's a group of folks that come in and that are helping you going to manage and procure this stuff correctly as you go through the next couple of years, sir. Hopefully that answered your question. Perfect. All right. So FEMA works on various categories of damage, and it's A through G, categories A through G. Category A is debris removal. Fortunately, the state is covering the cost of the majority of all your debris. You all had a little bit of debris at the beginning. That was right in the area of about $150,000. You guys have emergency protective measures, which is category B, which it's your staffing, a lot of the stuff that Jason did during preparing and then also repairing after the storm. So we're at about $15.2 million in those type of expenses. And fortunately, our partners, we submitted a project, and we've already gotten we've got a commitment for 7.6 that we should be getting back here fairly quickly. Some of this funding takes sometimes 8 to 10 months to get back, sometimes longer, but this is an expedited project we submitted, and you should be getting 7.6 back pretty quickly. Roads and bridges. Obviously, you've had a lot of damage in roads and bridges. We're looking at a cost estimate of $30+ million in damages that we're going to be submitting in those. Water control facilities, you're just over $4 million in some water control facilities. Public buildings and equipment, obviously you've got a lot of damage in both equipment and buildings. We're looking at about $8.9 million in those. Public utilities, you're looking at about 13.2, and then Parks and Rec, you're looking at about 1.5, which pretty much brings you to a cost estimate of about $75 million worth of damages within the town at this point, and I'd say that's probably about 80% of what we're doing. We're waiting for some costs to come back, and then we're also working with our partners on the beach renourishments and those type. Still some costs that are coming in, but right now you're looking at about 75.
Rec Center now, and I understand that the clock is kind of ticking on how long this can be paid for. Will that debris get removed from the Rec Center still under this this time period where we won't be financially obligated to do it ourselves?
So I'm assuming you're talking about, sir, the 100%, which expires the 7th, which is tomorrow. My apologies.
Yeah, very soon.
Yeah, tomorrow. So the 100% cost share from FEMA expires tomorrow. That doesn't mean the debris trucks pick up and go away. Debris is still going to be picked up. It then would go to a 90-10, 90% FEMA, 10% local, which generally is split 5% town, 5% state. We're having some discussions at the state to try to help us with that as we move forward, but the debris trucks will not go away. And then yes, so the debris is transported to that temporary staging area, and then it's taken from there, either processed from there, and then it's taken to what's called the final resting site from there. But no debris operations will start because of the shift in funding type.
Yeah, and my point for that, because it seems like removing the debris from the temporary center is one of the later things that the town is going to be doing. And it just seems like we're accumulating quite a bit of debris there, which means accumulating quite a bit of expenses to remove it.
So really the cost is all incurred. So when you're paying for that debris truck to pick it up on the side of the curb. It's not a separate expense. So the state's contract, in which they're funding 100% of that. So the debris pickup, the state has the contract. So they are paying the contractors. The town is not.
Okay. I'm just worried that we're going to have a balloon of potential cost liability from that, but you're saying that's not really...
State contractors, my apologies, but so believe it or not, there is just as much being hauled off. You just have more coming. You just have more coming in than they are currently hauling it off. Generally, it's a nighttime haul off. That what you're seeing, the larger trucks are coming in. They're being filled up, and they can move easier at night than what they can during the day down throughout the roads and that type thing. So, but the state did pick up the tab for your debris, which is unusual. I think they did it in Michael, and then they've also did it here, but they generally not do that. But they picked up 100% of the debris. So by the shift of the 100% cost, that is pretty much has nothing to do with debris. That is all your other emergency protective measures, repairs, those type things. The state has 100% of the cost for your debris removal, other than, I think it was, you had 150,000 at the beginning or something like that.
All right.
So.
All right, thank you.
All right, sir.
John?
Sure.
John, let's just go through that one more time, because there was a lot of questions about the extension of the 100% coverage.
Mm-hmm.
I think the feds gave us, 15 additional days? Is that right?
Yes, sir. I believe it was the 22nd, the Tuesday just before Thanksgiving, and then our federal partners extended it 15 days for Category A, which is debris, which is pretty much our state partners that are doing that, and then Category B, which is all our emergency protective measures, our repairs, those type things that are on that.
So just to be clear, on the debris side, even though it expires tomorrow, the state, there's not a 90-10 split on the debris side. It's really 90-10 with the state, right? The state's going to take the 10,
Yes.
so the town won't have 5 of that. They'll have 5 of the other category you talked about,
Yes,
correct?
they'll have 5 of the other categories. You'll have 5%, or no, you'll have 100% of the 150,000, but 150,000 is the only cost you have to date of debris. Now, not saying you're not going to do something in addition, maybe through your insurance companies or something like that, but right away, PPDR, which is private property debris removal, CPDR, which is commercial property debris removal, and then your beach is all being funded by the state, sir.
And so, John, as you're talking to the public here, from the debris perspective, there's not an imminent financial threat to the town. We're in good shape on the debris side. Is that fair?
No, your debris, unfortunately, it's going to take some time, is what we've discussed. Because you've got a lot of damage on here, but the debris will continue and is not going to be a financial burden to the town because the state has picked up 100% of the cost.
That's really helpful information, because I just don't think it's been clear to the public at this point. So I really appreciate you sharing that this morning.
Okay.
Yep.
And I just another kind of question along the same lines. Now, the private property debris removal, that's the iandebriscleanup.com people that go in and will actually tear down a house, demolish a house, and haul it away. The people are doing it on an individual basis. Is there a clock on that? Because I know a lot of people I talk to are nervous that their house isn't going to be demolished and removed before some deadline.
I believe it's 180 days, but I can get back with and we can put that out, but I believe it's 180 days from the date of the declaration that's got to be filed for. It's probably not going to be completed by then, but this is why we've been out. We've been making some additional efforts. We've got some contractors that are out going door to door for those that are there. And then we also have a call center out of Miami that is working with our property appraiser's office to get contact and reach maybe some of our snowbirds or whatever that haven't came in yet, and trying to reach out to them to make sure they go ahead and sign up for it. And that is both residential and commercial. We want them to sign up for it so they can be vetted, processed, and at least be in the queue before that 180 days is up, sir.
And to be clear, that tomorrow this isn't going to end. This will be going on for some time, so people shouldn't be too nervous if they haven't anybody come on and start work on their house yet.
No, not at all. And I think we had a couple residents call in, mayor, I was working with the mayor back when it was the 22nd of November. Our federal partners were a little bit delayed in getting the extension out, but we had folks, for whatever reason, that were concerned that debris operations were just going to shut down, and that is not the case. Debris, it's going to be a seamless transition for the town and for the residents. They will never see state partners that are working, since they're funding it.
And you file it. They ask for your insurance information. They handle everything with your insurance company. You literally have to do nothing else. If there's payments that are coming to the state through the insurance company, they handle all of it. And what they don't get, then they go back to FEMA and get covered that way.
I do believe they handle the permitting with the town and everything, the demolition and permitting. I think that's all covered by the same thing.
So I'd have to defer to Mr. Steve. I don't know if Steve is in here, but I know the contractors will work with the residents, but I do think that the residents have to sign off since it's their property on certain things, but the contractors do assist in that process. But the residents, since it's their property, they do have to sign off at the end. So,
Steve, would you mind coming up real quick and just giving us an update on that, about the demolition permits required? And
Morning, Stephen Poposky, building official. Yes, so a demo permit is required for any full demolition. They just apply through the town. Fees have been waived. There is an owner acknowledgement as well.
Thanks, Steve.
John, before we leave debris removal, just one last question, because there's just a lot of confusion about the process here. It's all good what you're saying. So tomorrow we shift to a 90-10, feds pick up 90, state picks up 10 on the debris removal. Could you just explain to the public what the county's role in this process is and how it's differentiated between the town's role and the state and the federal? Just procedurally, how does it work? What's the county's role? What's the town's role? Is the state just financing or the costs along with the feds? How does the county and the town partner in this effort on the debris removal side, just so people have a better understanding of how it works?
So, and I'm probably going to misspeak on this, but I know you do have some county roads, you've got some state roads, and then you've obviously got town roads. So the county, Lee County, has contractors that they're working with and coordinating for the county roads. Obviously, the town, we have what's called a debris task force that sits in our command post next door, and we have weekly meetings with the contractors if there's been any issues, those type things. And then we work with what we're targeting now is the areas that have most of the that have registered at the debris cleanup. So we're kind of trying to target them to those areas. But as far as the county, per Florida Statute 252, the county is lead on any emergency management responses, those type things that is going on, even in the town of Fort Myers Beach. But they have pretty much, due to the amount of devastation that we have in here, that is why you see a lot of the state liaisons and myself that have been here, because we're working with our state partners direct to try to augment what Lee County's doing, because obviously Lee County's got a lot going on. So we've been working directly with our state partners. But normally you would see Lee County doing that coordination down to its respective municipalities. But due to you all having so much damage here, they've placed us here to assist and work with them directly.
Well, we're very thankful for all of your help. I was just trying to understand it better, but thank you to everyone that's been involved in that process. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. All right, what I'd like to do is pause now on my brief. We've got two partners. Comcast, I'd like to bring up Jen Boyer, who's the Government Affairs Liaison, to give Comcast brief out on where we're at.
John, before you do that,
yes.
I believe we've got a couple more questions.
My apologies.
I just want to piggyback on what Councilman Veach was asking about the debris at Bay Oaks. Mm-hmm. So I understand that will be removed at some point. What is the process, though, for not continuing to put debris there in the first place, so that we can actually start moving that out of there and not having it there at all?
So I think that would be it. We need to have a discussion offline to see where else we could put it, because our trucks, obviously all the trucks we have, we want them to pick up the debris and dump it quickly so they can remove it. If they're having to haul it 10, 15, 20 miles to turn around and come back and start picking up again, it's really a turnaround time, and it's a quicker time. And I know it's an inconvenience, but it's a quicker way of debris pickup, because then they bring the, and I'd look for somebody else that has the terminology, the double 18-wheeler, the 53-foot dump trailers, and they bring those in at night when they can maneuver around, fill those up, and maneuver them in and out. I would recommend, and I know we want to get back, especially Bay Oaks, getting some sort of normalcy back, but we really need to have a debris staging area somewhere on the island. So it's a matter of if we have another place on the island to do it.
But what about the one
permitted.
Yeah, what about the one at Lovers Key State Park, right over the South Bridge, which is maybe 4 miles?
We can have a discussion about it, but again, my recommendation would be that you have the closest turnaround for the trucks to dump because otherwise it's going to take much longer to pick up your debris in the long run. My apologies, ma'am. All right, Ms. Jen?
Do you have, Councilor King, no questions? No, I just want to make sure he didn't have any. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Boyette. I'm External Affairs at Comcast. Thanks for having me today. And I have to echo everyone's statements. This is the first time I've been down to the beach. And for the amount of destruction you've had, it looks like you are really getting there. It's way better than I thought it would be. So you're making great progress. At any rate, I wanted to talk about our progress. I just got a fresh map for you this morning. Okay. So we have divided the island into 3 sections for recovery purposes. The north end, which of course is Estero Boulevard down to San Carlos Boulevard. The middle section for us, San Carlos Boulevard, then to Connecticut Street, and then the south end, which would be Connecticut Street. Point. Did you want to? Okay. At any rate, the first 2 sections, the north and the middle, are predominantly restored as of now. Predominantly restored means over 90% of houses and buildings can get service at this. That might have gone out. Can you hear me?
Okay. 90 or 9?
90%.
Great, thank you.
People are probably saying, oh, my house doesn't have service. Well, that's probably for a lot of reasons. So predominantly restored means our node and our equipment is working and able to service. Obviously, a lot of houses and buildings are not in a state where they can receive service yet. Once they are, those places call us. Okay. Thank you. How about that? Hello? Hello? Testing? Hear me now? Okay. All right. I've been told I'm a loud talker, so I could just talk loud too. We'll see. Hold on, let me just pull this back up again. Anyway, 90% is predominantly restored. For us, that's about 90% of households. Again, there's a lot of people probably saying that, oh, but I'm not back yet. If your area, which is the north and the middle section, if you're there and you don't have service back, please call us. We'll set up a technician to call and turn your services back on. Obviously, it could be a drop to your house that is missing, or you're still, your house is in no shape to have service yet. As soon as you are ready, your house is ready, or your building is ready, call us and we can send a technician out to get you restored.
Can you just give us a number?
And I can't, actually. I'm sorry, I don't have it. Of the amount of houses restored?
What number should people call?
Oh, 1-800-XFINITY. And they should also keep in mind that they can use the app. There's an Xfinity app on your phone. Sometimes that's quicker. Obviously, there's a lot of call volume from people in hurricane areas who are still calling, trying to figure things out. So there might be a longer than usual wait. So if you have the Xfinity app, you can text, you can direct message, you can email us. Sometimes that's easier or faster to get through. But the south end of the island is Connecticut Street to San Carlos. Carlos Point, I'm sorry. So the north part north of Coconut Drive is predominantly restored in the south, and then south of Albatross Street is predominantly restored. We're still recovering between Coconut Drive and Albatross Street. That area will not be serviceable until the 8th, which is this Thursday, so you don't have to wait too long. Again, that would be the whole island predominantly restored, and again, predominantly restored is about 90%. If people do not have service, they should call us at that point and have a technician come out to their house. But call us when you're ready. You obviously know if your walls don't have the wires in them anymore, or maybe it's just a drop to the pole that you need replaced. I'm getting calls from people who are saying they're getting bills. We bill ahead of time. So there are some glitches happening for some people. You will not be charged for the time you were down. You will also not be charged for any missing equipment or equipment that was destroyed. If you see a charge there, that's a mistake. It's happening for some people. Most bills should be correct, but do not panic if you get that. You probably will have to call us to straighten it out, unfortunately, but don't assume you have to pay it. just call us and we'll get you straightened out.
One quick question before
Yeah,
we move
go
on
ahead.
from that. You said when you're ready.
Yes.
And you talked about the drop from the pole to the house. Is
Yes.
that Comcast that, or is that something that the
That's
resident?
Comcast will do that. Yes, the drop is on us. That's your install. Obviously, there's some houses that had to, don't have walls left and need to rewire their interior wiring. So that would be on the homeowner. But we can do the drop from the house. We also have temporary lines in a lot of places, and everything's still rolling. You're still building, you've still got boring underground, you've still got a lot of recovery happening, debris removal. Sometimes those trucks and things kind of cut our lines accidentally as we come through. So places that are back up, households, businesses may experience being back up and then going back down again. If they wait, you will come back up, because if you have service working in your building, it will come back up. It's not a box issue. You just unfortunately have to wait. If you wait for more than a day, do give us a call and we'll send somebody out. But if you wait for it, it should come back up. It's probably a rolling outage that's happening because of generators still being filled or power temporarily going down, because we're linked to a lot of generators still. So I think that's most of my updates. Questions?
Jen, first of all, thank you for taking the time to be here this morning. It really means a lot. It's a great update. So I don't want to misstate what you said, but it sounds like as of this Thursday, we'll have 90% of service restored to the island. Is that a fair generalization?
That is fair. Yes, the whole island is serviceable, or would be serviceable. And again, that means our equipment's working. We just have to get you working at your house. Yeah, or building.
And do you have any advice for the residents? You've given a lot of good information today, but in terms of, is there anything that they should be doing? Just obviously just calling in and working with your company? I mean, is there anything else that you're hearing from your folks that we should be doing on our end to allow you to service easier? Anything any advice you might have to people?
I don't actually, just don't panic. Please don't get mad first. I know sometimes it's a pain to call and wait on hold. Again, there are a lot of people calling and waiting on hold because of the effects of the hurricane in Southwest. So the wait times might be a little longer, but if you bear with us, we will get you straightened out. So if you have any charges that you think are incorrect or equipment that's not there, we will work with you to figure that out.
And the 10% that has not been restored, is part of that 10% some of the homes and buildings that were just completely destroyed?
Absolutely. There's a lot of buildings that, obviously are still in recovery mode. They're getting reconstructed. They don't have service, and they do fall under those numbers because they're just not ready for us.
And aside from those obvious numbers, that part of the 10%, is there just any parts of the island just specifically that are difficult for you to get to that you haven't gotten to yet, or have you pretty much gotten the whole island at this point?
It's just that little section between Coconut and Albatross Street that we're still working on, and again, it's just issues that come up as we're building, whether it's an equipment issue or we couldn't get underground for some reason, or things are submerged or whatnot. It's just logistics of getting there.
Thanks again for being here.
You're welcome. Everybody okay?
Anyone have any other questions? Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
All right, so now I'd like to bring up our partners from CenturyLink. Ms. Kim, who's the Director of Field Operations, Lou, who's the Director of Engineering, Ronald, who's the Manager of Engineering, and Brandon, who's the Public Affairs and Permit Manager. So thank you all for coming.
Great, thanks, Sean. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Kim Presenzano. I'm Director of Field Ops. First of all, again, locally and here to rebuild with you. So astonishing work already and looking to partner with that. Wanted to give an update from our structure. You'll notice that as our central course had severe damage. Customers, so think of both from a copper and a fiber perspective. Our copper cable and all of those electronics obviously were severely damaged and mostly unrecoverable. That will have to be rebuilt. On those that are served by fiber today, which is we have 17 MDU HOA type properties here. 7 of those have been restored. The others, all of our electronics and the infrastructure has been restored. The buildings have not. So we're waiting on those customers. So that is where we are. From a central office perspective, we have moved in a temp temporary trailer. We are actually moving in I'll call it a permanent temporary solution, positioning at our location, and that will prepare us for the overbill that Lou, my partner within engineering, will address. So that is where we are from a CenturyLink Lumen perspective. If it's a copper customer, we are out of service with that. On the fiber, we are restoring, and we will be rebuilding that. Questions?
Any questions for Kim? She's smarter than me, so yeah. So my name's Lou Spano. So I'm running the engineering and construction here on the island. Actually, I was given these projects even before Hurricane Ian. As you could imagine, with the storm and the impacts, a significant slowdown on how we've been able to plan and engineer and hope to implement. So just to give you an idea of where we are today, we're a good month into our design and engineering process. We've completed our high-level designs as of last week. As you can imagine, there's a significant amount of what-ifs in terms of what the final design output will be based on any rezoning that may happen, based on the conditions in the field. And we're working very closely with Lee County and other partners to get the full scope of the coordination that we need to do to finalize our designs and really get to a point where we could put shovels in the ground and construct. I would say right now we have about 4,800 single-family homes in our design process right now. We do have hopes to blanket the whole island, along with allocating fiber for small business and additional MDU-type properties. But again, there's a lot of contingencies on getting and accelerating to where we want to be, where we could put shovels in the ground. So we're happy to be here and be as transparent as possible, and hope to answer any questions on that design process.
Could you give us an overview of a time frame of what you're thinking as far as getting fiber to as many residents as possible? So
in a typical scenario, a project like this would take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, even leaning more on the 4 to 5, 6 month side. We're doing everything in our power to create a design which has some flexibilities based on the field conditions, based on the debris, building certain things and assuming certain things are in an as-is condition. But we're doing everything we can to accelerate that and that construction interval down as much as possible.
I have a question now. Since so much has been destroyed and you're putting in new equipment, is this going to be an improved level of service? I mean, are we going to get, will customers get more bandwidth or?
Absolutely. So it's our Quantum Fiber product, and it'll be a minimum of 1 gig. There actually is opportunities to go beyond a gig, but I could certainly guarantee you it'll be at least 1 gig. And in truth, we're designing the network in a way that even if the household is vacated or that the structure is demolished, it will be capable of receiving service at some point when things are fully built out and restored.
So you're anticipating having fiber optic available for every customer on the island, or every structure, I should say, on the island?
Yeah. So every lot line that we're in the design process to build that out. So that is the intent. Obviously, we have to vet everything out. We have our own internal funding process, and so we have to assess the feasibility, and so the timing on that availability for every structure will be contingent on all the other activity here on with utilities and with debris removal. But that would be the intent.
Thank you.
Are there questions for these guys? Thanks.
I appreciate the time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. You got something?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brandon Miller. I'm the Public Affairs and Permitting Manager with Lumen CenturyLink. I am local to the Fort Myers area. This is my home for the last 6 years. I love being here, so please use me as a resource for questions or concerns. I work with our Government Affairs team in Tallahassee, as well as the team here today. So I will be around, hopefully for the foreseeable future. I love Fort Myers. I love Southwest Florida. And I look forward to working with you all, your staff, and your team to do what we can to get service back to this awesome community.
If you have business cards with you, would you mind leaving us a card? That would be great.
I will, yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, appreciate it.
Thank you guys for coming out today.
Awesome, thank you all. And pending any questions, we do have FPL here. The only thing they had to mention is that they finalized the process for the temporary power poles. So pending any of your question, if you guys had any specific questions for her, she was not going to brief out. Unless you guys had any specific questions for her, I can bring her up.
I just had one, if you don't mind.
Good morning.
No, just state your name so everybody knows. I know who you are, but
Yes, Charlotte Miller, FPL External Affairs Manager.
Thanks, Charlotte. And I know we have talked about this via phone and in our meetings, but there's still seems to be some disconnect between when our staff is sending over the needed information to be able to get reconnected. And it's quite honestly causing some anger that doesn't need to be created. And is there anything FPL can do to let us know that they've received it, that it's in the system, so that our residents aren't coming to us, then we're sending them to them, and then they're coming back to us even more angry than they were when they first came to us?
Yeah, when you get calls or emails, send them to me. What's happening is, for one of the most recent ones that you and I spoke with, we sent a crew back out that same night. They have power. So I think what's happening, and they had a meter. So I think what's happening in a number of cases is, especially if people have not been here and are just arriving, they still need to flip that main breaker switch. We will not do that. So that is the vast majority of what's happening. We can give some messaging to Jenny to put out on the website if that's helpful. I also have the messaging now, as was just mentioned, on the temporary pole process. So we'll get that to her today. But with those situations that are coming in, power is available to them.
Yeah, what is the average time frame now? I don't know if you guys are getting more requests. What is the average time frame from when you receive the documentation from the town to when someone will be out to do the power?
Yeah, when we had crews totally dedicated on the island, it was same day or next day. FPL is to the point in the restoration process now that we're having to diversify our crews to get back to normal work in other areas that have not been as affected. If a customer calls us, they will be told that it's up to a 5-day time frame. But from what I am seeing, it's still at this time within 1 or 2 days. But it could be up to 5, especially if there's an underground situation that we might have to bore or take care of. Okay.
Just to go back to what you were saying at the beginning, it's your recommendation that before they contact the town or FPL to make sure that there's a meter installed, because chances are if your meter is installed, you already have power.
That is correct. And if there was electrical work done, it's a prudent idea to have that electrician throw the breaker, or even more so if there had not been extensive electrical work done, just in case issues happen on the customer side of that meter. But from us, the meter's in and ready to go. Feel free, like I said, send us those emails or calls. We're happy to tell them what we just discussed, so we can take that off your plate.
One other issue that has been coming up over the last week is that once people get power back, they still may not be able to live in the home. It's still being renovated or whatever. But they're already seeing, if they were on the budget, they're already seeing their bill come out for $200, $300, sometimes even way more than that, when they're not even living in the house. Is there a process that they can do should they call FPL, or is it you just have to pay it because you were on the budget?
Yeah, if there is a bill that's incorrect, like that one you and I recently discussed, which is, totally incorrect, they can contact our customer service department. If you are getting emails or calls in, feel free to send me, and I can send them to our customer advocacy folks who will contact them directly. Hopefully it's not very many of them, but if I have seen a few instances of those occurring, and we're happy to take care of that right away.
Any other questions for Charlotte?
Yes, it's so great that you're here this morning. Could you make sure we all get your business card before you go?
Yes, absolutely. The mayor has it, and a number of people at the town have it, so I'll make sure you do as well.
Could you send it to us? Because I promise
Yes.
I won't. I just have one person who has a hardship, and I'd love to have a contact with FPL.
Oh, absolutely, yes. We're more than happy to help.
Yeah, just get that. If you could just get me a card or something, that would before you go. That would be great.
Will.
Thank you. Yep.
You're welcome.
I think one of the issues, too, that people were getting bills, and I found this personally, is if you were on the budget.
On the budget billing program?
If you're on the budget billing program, you're still getting bills. So you have to call customer service, get off the budget billing, and then they do a settlement type thing, and then, when you're all ready to go again, you can get back on budget. But if you're on budget, you're going to keep getting those bills.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that had not crossed my plate yet, and you're absolutely right. That's an exception when you have the budget billing. So, yeah, absolutely, contact customer service, and we can take people off that for however length of time they'd like to be off of it, until they're back on track with the house, if that's easier.
And I would love your card, too, because I have a totally separate issue offline.
Okay.
Thanks.
Will do. Any other questions?
Thank you, Charlotte.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to thank our utility partners, and I want to apologize to the council. I know this has been a very long brief out. I think that's my time frame that says I was up about 10 minutes ago, but I would like to open it up for questions. My apologies. I know I cut you off before I sat down, sir, but I felt it was good that we did this kind of high-level brief out before I left, and then pending any questions from the council.
John, if I could ask you, first of all, thank you for your service. You gave some amazing data in your report that I've not heard before. Promise me you'll meet with Jenny before you leave and do a Vulcan mind meld and get her all that information so she can get some of that on our website, because that's really helpful information. So don't leave with all that wonderful information. Talk with Jenny, do a debrief with Jenny. You've got something on paper, share that with her. And let's get that out to the public, because those are some amazing numbers. So I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you.
And that is real. I thought this was a value. Your team, same as many, and I believe you said it, there's a lot of work going behind the scenes, and I'm just as guilty of it in my home jurisdiction. We don't do a good enough job of selling what we're doing or briefing out what we're doing, and your team's done a phenomenal job with everything they've been doing.
Yeah, I like to use the term, we got to tell our story.
Yes.
And so if you'd pass that information on to Jenny, all those talking points and whatever she could utilize, that would be great. Thank you.
I will do that, sir. Yes, sir. Any further questions?
Yeah, can you talk to FEMA trailers? I remember a conversation a while ago, and FEMA does not typically allow trailers to be set up in a flood zone. And there was talk about trying to get some kind of exemption for that. Now, can people have FEMA trailers on Fort Myers Beach?
So I'm going to hold off on that discussion. The mayor and I actually went to a meeting on Friday. Friday, met with our FEMA state and county partners to really discuss some options and processes on how we're trying to do it, because there's a lot of floodplain issues on the island. They are looking at trying to make some things work, but I can't go into details of that as of yet publicly as far as what's going on. But our state and federal partners are working aggressively to try to get this going, to get trailers or some sort of housing on the island. Yes.
All right, thank you.
And Bill, under my comments, I was going to touch on that specific, so I'll touch on it a little bit more.
Okay. Pending no further questions, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for the partnerships and the service. So.
John, if you wouldn't mind just hanging around for the next one, just in case they have questions.
And thank you very much. The work has been extraordinary.
So we're going to move on to the next item under Administrative Agenda B, which is to reject the Selection Advisory Committee's recommendation in the response to RFP 23-01-AD. And I'll start out with that. In speaking with John and John's vast knowledge of these disaster recovery contracts, we wanted him to take a look at it and pick through it and send it up to the state partners. They took a look at it. They thought it was good for the now, but it wasn't good for that long term that we were discussing a little bit earlier. So they took a look at it, they rewrote it. Their recommendation was to reject these bids and then send it back out for rebid to get everything in it that they feel we're going to need going forward. So that's why this is back on here today. It has nothing to do with the company that was selected. It has nothing to do with the committee that picked them. It's just based on my conversations and staff's conversations with state representatives or our state partners. Their recommendation was that we take a harder look at this to make sure that we have everything covered that we need going forward. So that's why that's back on here.
So a couple of questions then, Mayor. So the reason for this is that basically we're changing the RFQ enough, right? We're changing the specifications on what we expect from this service, and so that's why you want to send it out for rebid, because it's changed?
Correct, and John, you could probably explain it much better than I can.
If I may comment, Mayor, to Council, in looking at the RFP, obviously your staff again did a phenomenal job. They were under the gun trying to get help in here to assist them in trying to formulate the projects. In experience, this contractor that you're bringing in, you're really going to be married to for 3 to 6 years. This contractor is going to assist you project development, mitigation projects. There's going to be various funding sources, both from the state and federal partners over the next 2 to 4 years, that they're going to be able to provide the technical experts to be able to bring in and help you manage this. So you had a good RFP for what you needed right now, but we wanted to set you all up for success moving forward into the future and really increase that scope of work, sir, to all the various technical expertises you're going to need. Then they've got various tentacles that they can reach out to and bring other partners in to assist rather than just project development.
And so for clarity, this group will be replacing what we've been using from the state and from you and all that. It's something more long-term, sustainable.
Yes, you truly need, and all their services are cost recoverable. They write it in M&A. It's called Management and Administration of the project, so all their services are cost recoverable. You'll, of course, have to pay for it. I think it's on a 30 or 45-day basis. I don't remember how we wrote it into the scope, but all that is cost recoverable. But it truly is going to be more trying to set you all up for success on the great rebuild you all are going to have here, and they're going to be able to provide the technical experts to assist butt and seat here, advising your various verticals, your public works, parks and rec, administration, those type things. They're going to be able to provide that technical expertise. They do this 365.
This will go away. The state contractors will come in and help us until we procure our long-term solution.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that the council reject the Selection Advisory Committee's recommendation in response to RFP-23-01-AD, as in David.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. They obviously liked it.
Nate from the truck?
Yeah, the beep from the truck. Before we move on, John, can we do these resolutions for the state of emergency? Is now a good time, or do you want to do those later?
We can go ahead and do them now. So what you have before you again is the extension of the ones that we've had come before you. An inquiry was made by town staff regarding the hiatus that we're going to have moving forward until we meet again in January of next year. As a result, we'll miss the every 7 days. And I just want to remind the mayor in particular and the council as a whole that under our emergency procedures chapter 12 of the town code specifically grants the authority to the mayor in the absence of a meeting and the ability to meet to extend on 7-day increments until you meet again. So that's what's before you is one, the extension of the one that's will scheduled to expire today, and then also in approving that, you will also be giving the mayor the authority to execute any additional ones that need to be done between the date that the one today is going to expire, which is next Monday, through the end of the calendar year into the next year.
Do I need to read both resolutions into record?
Always my recommendation that you read the resolution in title and record.
All right. Resolution 22-42, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending and extending the proclamation that a state of local emergency exists because of the catastrophic impacts caused by Hurricane Ian, providing for conflicts, providing for Scrivener's errors, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. You want me to read the other one as well, since it's a different number?
I would recommend that you make a motion to approve that one, then take up the next one separately.
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 22-42?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just one kind of question now. Any action taken under these emergency provisions, is there a mechanism where the council can be informed of actions that would normally be in front of council, but were instead, done unilaterally because of these provisions?
I believe that, and I'll defer to staff, that anything that's been taken place since the original one has either been brought to your attention individually, that you've all been individually briefed, or it's been brought before as an agenda item for action or ratification. But certainly, if it's the direction of the council as a whole, we can put together a list of all things that have taken place on an emergency basis since the declaration of emergency prior to Ian's landfall.
And I'm just kind of mentioning this because I have no idea if this is something that Dan does every hour, or is this something that these powers are used infrequently. It would be just nice to know.
Yeah, I can tell you that working with staff, anything that isn't this simple, I shouldn't say simple, but this one document, you guys are going to know about it. I'm not making a decision without everybody hearing first. Yeah. So, but this, I think what you were talking about, John, this is just something that I can continue doing if council approves it, without having to come back again and do it in a format like this.
That is correct, but for clarification purposes, the authority to actually do or implement some of the emergency powers is primarily vested in the town manager, not the mayor. So if that wasn't clear, those powers are actually given to the town manager to implement, and again, if it's the will of the council, we can, a list of all actions that have been taken can be provided, and those that have also been ratified or taken action by the council in that regard.
Any other discussion? There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Then we got Resolution 22-40. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Town manager items.
Yes, I'm going to ask our finance staff, Sherry and Cindy, to come up. We've got two chairs so we can share. First of all, Cindy Davis, who I've left. She's, like me, a retiree who has come out of retirement to provide services for the community. She's an expert in the finance area, and with Sheriff being on some medical leave and then some turnover in the department, we gladly welcomed to the team last week. So you got a lot of information passed to you at the last meeting. They're going to attempt to kind of summarize what Cindy and Sherry have found over the last few days, and then we'll talk more in generality. So I'm going to piggyback off of John's discussion about procurement and just say that we're taking another second look at pretty much all of our procurements that have taken place since the storm. There are a number of them out there. When we meet with later in the week, Director Guthrie is going to visit. We have a long list of things that we want to talk to him about, but possibly some procurement help would be in order right now because Amy pretty much handles things through her shop. We've got a lot of activity. I've challenged this engineering services. I don't know that we can wait until this solicitation is complete for everything, so I may be coming back to you with some other ideas. But anyway, wanted to give the ladies an opportunity to kind of give you a quick update and do a little Q&A on the finances.
Good morning. I'm Sherry Russ from the Finance Department. Our spend to date, or our purchase orders that we have put out in place for the town so far, are approximately $15 million. That is mostly the emergency work that needed to be done right at front. So what FEMA calls Cat A and Cat B. These are those purchase orders. Of those purchase orders, we've paid out approximately $5 million of that. And we have the rest remaining $10 million is obligated to be paid. The majority of those expenses come from the water and public works departments, the biggest being the water utility repairs. The next expense that I know that has been talked about was the payroll we've been paid. We've had a total of overtime and double time together of $450,000. From what we understand, the double time will not be reimbursable by FEMA, and that works out to be a little over $150,000. We will go back and double check those numbers just to make sure, because we will have to submit this to FEMA for the parts that we can't get reimbursed for. Our revenues to date basically are just the insurance claims, and we've received a little over $3 million from that so far. I do have where that has been obligated to, or what it goes for, the different insurance claims. Our insurance is being handled by we have somebody handling that. We're totally insured for, with flood and property, about $19 million. Our anticipated revenues that are coming in that we know for sure, through FEMA, you can do expedited projects, and that's the Cat A, Cat B things. Tidal Basin estimated what those would be. We estimated that to be about $15 million, and of that $15 million, we'll get half of that up front. That has been submitted to FEMA and approved, and it is currently sitting at the State Comptroller's office, so the check should be arriving this week. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Sherry? Guess not.
No other questions on finances. Okay. Thank you, ladies.
Well, Chris, when we say there's no questions, that's a pretty granular, that was granular information that was provided, which was very helpful. Could you just, with each week that you're here and digesting our current situation, could you just take just a minute and we heard a nice briefing from John on some of the potential for reimbursement from the state and the feds and county and other programs. Are you, as you get deeper and deeper into this, and we can have our finance people comment as well, but are you feeling comfortable about the town's future from a financial standpoint, given all the challenges, but also all the assistance that's coming our way? Can you just sort of give a 10,000-foot sort of analysis, brief analysis as to how you're feeling?
You know, I'm going to say that so far so good. I mean, we have, one of our biggest challenges is just the staff has been under a great deal of pressure and work. We've had some illnesses throughout. We've got vacancies, which I can go over with you. So when you have that many empty seats, as John says, no butts in them, then you have a lot of challenges. Amy's been out with a loss in her family. It's been critical. So we're just trying to still get our arms around it. But in general, between the reserves that you have in the general fund and the check from FEMA, and the mayor and I met in Orlando with the League of Cities insurance executive and walked through a number of suggestions that he had on things that we could do. There's money in our policy, for temporary office space. There's money in our policy for temporary employment. There's some things that we didn't know about that we're still learning about. They haven't even begun. It'll be several months before they have accurate loss information for us to sit down and talk about our claim. I recommend that you get some sort of public adjuster or some sort of professional, that your 15 or 19 million is maybe half of what you should have had. This is always a calculation of controlling premium costs. So every manager does his best to do that through the budget process, and unfortunately when premiums go up, then you kind of lower your risk and you get lower premiums, and you're gambling that you don't get hit, and y'all have kind of lost the gamble at this point on that. But listen, we have tons of help that's coming from all of our partners. We learn something new every day. The procurement is just over the last week kind of we got to back up. My understanding this morning is tidal basin was procured properly, or at least we ran it up the chain of command, so that $500,000 plus or minus, is reimbursable. We're still looking at some of the contractors that we've been using in the utilities area and others to make sure those procurements. We had a procurement due either last week or this week on general engineering work that we now have to back up and take a look at again. So there's, to answer your question, short version is so far so good. I don't see a crisis. We're going to have to help kind of reorg, I think, a little bit. Amy's been taking on a lot of the procurement responsibilities. Should that be in the clerk's office or in finance? We have a payroll and an HR function that's been with the clerk. We've talked to Amy about that. There's a number of questions that I have just about already started, so I'll go. There's a couple of odds and ends. And there's 2 or 3 staff items that I want to see as Chad got a minute to come up. We started getting information last week, and God forbid on top of a hurricane, if we had some sort of major red tide outbreak, I've been through a bunch of those in my career. On top of everything else, when you can't breathe the air, then you've got dead fish on the beach, then you've got to react to that. So I know that the state or the Corps of Engineers has started, come on over here, has started sending notices out that they may open the flow. Lake Okeechobee is at some of its highest levels, and once they start opening those gates, it affects us. I don't have to tell you that. I'm sure you've been around for a while, so I wanted to just kind of do a quick update.
Morning, everyone. Chad Schutz, environmental staff. So good news is this morning there was an announcement that the red tide alert had been rescinded. I think that's by FWC or Department of Health. The bad news is that U.S. Army Corps did announce that it's going to step up its releases from Lake O into the Caloosahatchee estuary. So that's where we stand on that. If you have any questions, I have drafted a letter that will be out to you shortly. Feel free to critique it and put any suggestions that you want in there.
So the good news is they're not going to release.
No, they've increased their releases. That's the bad news.
But the red tide's not spreading.
The red tide has, the red tide alert has been rescinded for our area. It does still persist at Sanibel Lighthouse, so that's just a hop, skip, and a jump from here. So, whenever you look at this water sampling, it is just a snapshot in time at a particular tide in a particular place that is going to move around in an hour or so. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt and kind of look at the big picture, and I can continue filling y'all in on the data that's available.
And I think my understanding is that the red tide is pretty severe north of us, right? Like Sarasota?
Yes, sir. That's where the most intense blooms were.
Right. Chad, has there been any, I'm sorry, Bill, were you done? I was just curious, has there been any data or testing done to the water as a result of Hurricane Ian and some of the debris that was in the water and or the bay? Has there been any data that's come back in terms of water quality as it relates to the hurricane and the debris?
There has been. I'll have to follow up with, there were some folks that were out there from FGCU. We have not resumed our water quality, and that's something I wanted to get direction on from y'all, whether or not we're going to continue that outfall testing with the environmental lab from Lee County that we have been doing for several years now. So we don't have any data from our testing as a town. Yet there are some folks that have been out there, and I can chase that up for you.
I would just point out that that's something I've tried to chase down, because I really, to me, it's really interesting to know what's really going on in our water. And the Safe Beaches program, I think it's called, through the state, they only test beaches that are open to make sure they're safe to be open, and they consider ours to be closed. But there's also a lot of things that we just don't test for. Some of the water testing we do in the back is mostly about nutrients in the back bay. What they do in the safe beaches is they're looking at bacteria and different infections like E. coli and indicator species. But I don't think anything we do test for the contaminants that have been in the water from household chemicals, gas, oil from the boats and the cars that are in the water. I don't think there's any testing program at all that's testing for that in our waters.
What's the question?
I was just filling in on my experience with testing, but there's no testing program that's looking for contaminants like oil, gas, household chemicals.
Again, I can follow up with FGCU and see all the parameters that they were testing for in the wake of the hurricane.
Well, thanks. My conversations with FGCU is they were not testing through this, so we don't know what the trends are with the water.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chad?
I'm just wondering, you said that the LACO is going to release more. Is there anything that we can do, any kind of stance that we can take? We're through rainy.
Lake high on just the ecology there, and that trickles down to bass fishing and the snail kites and other issues for the lake that the high level is. But as far as a stance, Councilman King did ask me to draft a letter. It's been a bit of a moving target from during November when the Corps announced a release and then held back due to public input, and then went ahead and did do a release, and now they've increased that release. So I think now is a good time to convey your wishes to the Army Corps. You're welcome.
Chad, I thought I heard you say that you're looking for guidance from us on to resume testing. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Are you wanting that today, or is this something?
Yeah, I would appreciate if it is the will of the council to continue that testing. I know there's some concerns from Lee County Environmental Lab with regards to just health and safety and the ability to access the outfalls where they're doing their testing. But if once we get the green light on that, if it's the will of the council to continue that water testing, it's my recommendation to continue to do so. So yes, sir.
Do we want to give Chad consent to continue testing?
You're looking for consensus, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I support that.
Yes, I know in the testing programs that you've been doing, do people have to get into the water to take a sample?
No, sir.
All right.
You got your direction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask Steve to come up, and while he comes up, I'll give a few more briefings. So office space-wise, just so you know, I assume you've noticed last week we took out trailers and added a big trailer. So the plan right now is that we, other than the small finance trailer, staff is in the two big trailers that are on the compound. We're still trying to push to get the modular buildings brought in. That'll be the next phase in terms of office space for staff. Most of the work that I was involved in to see if there was another option for us in terms of office space over the next 3 to 5 years, resulted in not much. I did go to the library. It doesn't seem to really fit our need. Went to a couple of commercial buildings, and those didn't seem to work out. So we may be in modulars for a while. We're still the Bay Oaks bid on improvements to that, I think, are due here in the next week or so. I'm not sure if Larry's still in the building.
Due on the 8th.
So when we see what we see there, we'll come back to you. For the time being, our plan is to occupy these until the modulars show up and move into the modulars. We've had a little bit last week of a kind of reality check on public interaction with staff and things. And, so we're trying to rethink how to create an environment where citizens can come in and meet with someone. I don't think those trailers are conducive for that. So we've had someone move in to either this tent or the one next door and create a system with our security help to kind of get people to talk to who they need to talk to. And it's Steve. Come sit down, Steve. So Steve is...
So Chris, just before you proceed, I just have had, and I'm not disputing your judgment on this, but just give people a little bit more insight. There's a lot of folks on the island who view the library as a really an interesting option for the town. And would you just, since you went over there and looked at it, would you talk a little bit about the challenges with the library and or the opportunities there based upon what you saw? Because people keep still asking me about the library because it seems like it's a beautiful building. It's so close. It's a viable, I mean, it just seems like a viable option to many people. Explain what some of the challenges are with the library, because I think people are still confused as to why that's not an obvious option.
So the big challenge is obviously the lack of elevators anywhere, because every elevator on the island probably is got to be replaced. And the timeline for those is a long timeline, and the space they have, I believe, is on the 3rd floor. Other than public access, the biggest challenge, from my perspective, cubicles and placing everybody in cubicles versus having something a little more conducive to public output. I'm trying to avoid if I can. Now, that's y'all's decision ultimately, but the space on the 3rd floor, there are 2 big rooms. One of them kind of has a coffee shop in the middle of it, so the layout of it's a little different. You'd kind of be putting cubicles in kind of a public gathering space on the 3rd floor, and then there is one other big room that could be used for meeting space, but the idea of putting, I don't know how many cubicles you could fit into the other larger space. It's relatively small. So that's just some feedback. And listen, when we get into the modulars, we can take a second look at things. I can't remember exactly, the building manager that toured the library with us had some timelines as to, I think he was going to know about his elevator in the next few weeks, at least in terms of a time when it might be replaced. And so we're still wide open to opportunities. But
I appreciate that. And the second and the first floor is completely off limits, or could we use part of the first or second floor, or why just the 3rd floor?
Yeah, first floor is not usable, obviously, and the second floor, I believe, is where they're storing all their books. Everything they could save, I think, is pretty much on the 2nd floor now. So what they offered was that 3rd floor.
All right. Thank you.
So
while we're on it, maybe you want to touch base on the other one, that the green building that's down about the 6,000 block. A lot of people are still questioning that. I'll let you take this one.
Well, it's very expensive, is bottom line. It does have a 3rd floor that is would be great. It's got 20 offices, 2 conference rooms, reception area. Again, no functioning elevator, so getting people to the 3rd floor. The 1st floor is being rehabbed and has the potential of being a meeting location for these kind of meetings. The 2nd floor was a beauty salon or a fitness center or something. It's not really, although the owner says he could remodel it in its current state, wouldn't be usable really for us. 3rd floor is usable. I don't even want to throw numbers out, but it was very expensive beyond our means.
We'll just say it was north of $500,000 per month.
It was very expensive. So obviously what I really want Steve to focus on is the letter, and I'm not sure you got it, and I'm not sure how many versions of it are out there. So, but let me pause and say I've asked Steve to step up. You know that Daphne stepped down pretty much the week I got here, and we had to have somebody serve as an interim director for community development, what I call community development. Steve, relatively new to the organization just before the storm. I'm told that it was hoped that he would be coached and mentored and be capable of serving. It's just that I've asked him to serve a little earlier than anticipated. We'll still, advertise the vacancy and go through a recruitment process. And if Steve wants to apply, that'll be his decision when that time comes. But I think we put an announcement out late last week kind of designating Steve, even though he and I haven't really agreed on any sort of salary for what he's doing yet. I've asked the state to backfill Steve. It's not fair to ask Steve to do the director position and building official. I've asked Parks and Rec to donate a couple of employees to help with as being trained as permit techs. So the bottom line is this department is very important. I don't have to tell you that in terms of the public interaction. We're trying to see how we can best serve the public from this location for the time being. We're trying to identify how to beef up our staff to be able to meet the demand that's coming our way. But this letter will go out to the residents, and it's that substantially damaged structure letter, as I understand it, which is going to probably generate phone calls to you, and I just, before it went out, wanted y'all to know that and to be able to ask questions. Let me see if I've totally messed it up. Steve wants to add something.
Sure. So the letter, the letter is something that the state really reiterated that we need to do as part of the National Flood Insurance Program. We realize that it will be sort of new information to some people as they receive it, but it does provide information about how the properties have been substantially damaged, and it does allow them to appeal that and explains how to do that as well. So they can, if they disagree with the assessment, they can always follow the instructions as far as completing a repair improvement cost form and to further substantiate their claim that they have not been substantially damaged. There are hundreds of structures that have been clearly damaged, however, so this will be going out to certainly over 500 addresses.
Stephen, if I could, I've not seen the letter. I'd love to see a copy of it. Just got, as I assume everybody else did on the island, I got my property tax bill, and it's a bit confusing as to whether we should pay right now and utilize the discount for paying early, hold on, or submit your information about the damage or the lack of use of your property right now, and whether that'll be, and there's a school of thought that says that really won't affect this year's property taxes, but it potentially could affect next year's. So definitely do that. But then there's a school of thought that it might affect this year's. Do you have any insights on what the county's thinking on this and what people should do? Because it's a bit confusing out there for folks.
So I think we'll know more later this week.
Okay.
There was a call last week with all city reps, and the county held the call. Most of it was about everyone's status on estimates of revenue loss. There's a delegation meeting. When I say that, I assume you all understand. Local legislative delegation meeting Wednesday begins at 9 o'clock. It's at the State College in room AA 177. Obviously, the mayor representing the town will go and present some of our issues, but the rest of the call, other than revenue estimates, was about the legislature's desire to forgive taxes for structures, not land value, but for structures that are damaged or gone. And there may be special sessions as early as next week where some of this will continue. The obvious from our end is that we have to be made whole. So whatever they would waive, we would want the legislature to backfill the loss. So I'm going to be positive and optimistic and say that we're going to collect the amount of revenue for ad valorem either from the state, but to answer your question, I mean, the only thing at risk is the discount between paying it now and waiting, but I think I would wait to see what the legislature's intent. I think even if you paid it, and if they come up with legislation that forgives, then there'll be a credit or a refund or something of the sort to residents that pay their bill. A lot of residents don't have a choice. If they have a mortgage, it's escrowed and their mortgage company is going to pay their taxes because they want to pay the lowest amount. I know mine have already been paid where I live, but there's work in progress to provide ad valorem relief that will affect everybody, schools, towns, county, any taxing authority. So we'll know more.
That's really helpful information, and I think I saw where the governor extended the deadline for that discount, for the early pay discount, so you might want to check your bill. So people have a little bit of time to watch and see what happens with the special session of the legislature, but I know everybody got those property tax bills, so that's really helpful guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. You're good.
Sorry. 1 second before Steve leaves.
He just thought he was off the hook.
Sorry. Can't get through this. And I don't even know if this is a question for Steve or for Jason, whatever, but I'm getting a lot of emails and questions on building permits, timing, demolition permits that then again will flow over into building permits. Can we just talk about where we are on the whole demolition, building permit process, timing, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. So if you're going to demolish a structure, you need to have a demo permit. Again, fees have been waived, so just apply for that using our online, it's called iWork online service, and we will process that. Part of the demo process is you have to get utilities, you have to have the water and sewer confirmed as capped and ready to demo. They don't want to have any leaking water or sewage. So that's part of that process. And as far as building permits, same thing. We have a lot of information on our website. We try to provide frequently asked questions to answer a lot of these questions that we're getting. So I'd definitely check into that. If not, you can, if you still have questions, go ahead and email us, buildingpermits@fmbgov.com, or you can call us at the main line, and I believe it's extension 3.
So there's questions that demolitions are not being issued until June. Is that just a horrible rumor?
No, we're processing all permits, and definitely it won't take that long. Like I said, we're struggling with volume, but we're doing the best we can. I'm not sure where that came from. Yeah.
So I was wondering. So timing-wise, and we had this discussion before of not charging for the permitting process, and I think that ends December 17th?
January 17th.
January 17th. So what is the timeline right now on permitting? I mean, if everything is in place, they got it, you know, they put it in, what is that process?
That depends on the permit, but generally speaking, 2 to 3 weeks, keep to that sort of historical average. It is challenging. We're receiving really a record level of permitting volume. So it's been over 2,700 since the storm. And other than some limited helpers and people from other departments, we have just a handful of staff. So they are doing a great job and getting those permits out. But to be understand, some of these permits, like residential permits, interior remodel permits, they require a building code plan review process. So they have to go out for review, and then once that's done, which is done by a private provider, it comes back to this to the town, and we, issue the permit.
Been staff time and having to track that down?
Yes, definitely. Part of the process after a storm, the National Flood Insurance Program requires us to receive documentation that shows the cost of the permit, or not the cost of the permit, cost of the work that you're going to perform. So all of your costs need to be itemized and placed on that repair/improvement cost form, and that needs to be included with all building permit applications. That is part of the process that we need to follow. So be sure to include that. The biggest thing, I think, just to read through the FAQs and read through your application. There's a lot of information on the actual form as well. And sometimes, you know, if you're going to follow that, I think you have a lot better chance of getting through the process without back and forth.
Yeah, I want to be careful with the word itemized, because that scares a lot of people, and they think that we want to know how many pieces of sheetrock you used, how many screws it took to put. That's not the itemized you're talking about. You're simply talking about plumbing was this much, electrical was this much, cabinets were this much. I mean, it's not a huge form to fill out, and it's just an estimate. It's not a. It's got to be in the ballpark. It can't be, you know, I'm replumbing my house for $1,500.
Right. A lot of people are doing owner-builder permits, as if they own the property in their own name, and they're going to live there for at least a year after they get done the construction. That's a way some people can save some money. We ask that they value their own labor at least $17.25 for sort of general construction labor per hour. And then you multiply that by the amount of hours you feel it's going to take you to repair. And you just follow the form, and if you have a bid from a contractor, obviously you can use that. That's a really simple way of doing it. Have a general contractor come and give you an estimate or a quote for how much it's going to cost to repair all the different aspects, so your wind and flood damage.
And there's still a notary that is required for this, so we're in the process. Is that like to put it all in, or?
Yeah, we've tried to be pretty understanding, because of the, some people are, you know, they don't have varying levels of electrical services at their property. So we have been waiving that notary requirement since the storm. Normally it is required at every form, you can see at the bottom, but we're trying to expedite the process and understand that certain services are hard to come by.
So that is being waived then?
Currently, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Questions for Stephen?
I guess I'm not sure who to direct this to, but Steve, thanks you for all your hard work and your coworkers in that department. Chris, you had mentioned about getting two employees over from Public Work. Parks and Recreation. Is that enough, or do we need to add more people there?
Well, without getting on a soapbox about this department, I've already said how critical it is. So, you know, the fees that you waive, these are ballpark. So you generate about $1 million in permit fees on staffing up because of the available revenue at hand. So I've challenged Steve to come up with an org chart with a staffing that will meet the demand that we are guessing we're going to get. And all this work that you've already mentioned, there's a planning committee meeting tomorrow, and there's changes coming, and all the redevelopment of your commercial areas, and there was lots of conversation about housing at the League of Cities meeting, both the county meeting and the league meeting. I think housing is going to be a legislative issue this session. I'm being long-winded to say they need more help, but they can't afford it right now unless we come up with a way. Now, we're going to apply to get reimbursed for the revenue, if possible, that we've waived. Whether that will be approved or not, I don't know. We have a long list of asks that we are trying to prepare for the legislature. Obviously, every community that goes through this has the same challenge, where the amount of activity for the building department just quadruples, you know, and how do you address that in terms of staffing? So a lot of work to be done, Councilman. I couldn't tell you right now, you know, what kind of help we're going to get from the state. We've already got that request in. You know, if we can get another building official at least, maybe a couple of more plan review people, a couple of more permit techs, and see where we go. But he and I haven't even talked about it. I just asked him to kind of put the idea together. But it is a problem because of the revenue situation and where we're at.
Chris, on that point, and this is just me speaking as an individual counselor, but if there is a way to means test that waiver of the permit dynamic to help folks who are really struggling. And if there's a way to qualify it in a way that I don't think, for the folks that are fully insured and financially sound, I don't want to speak for people, but I think there would be a willingness to pay those permit fees if they knew that money actually went to the permitting process and they knew it would help expedite the process. So you might just put your thinking cap on and see if there's a way we could delineate within that fees process in ways to utilize it for those who are really struggling versus those who are more than happy to pay and could afford to pay, and then particularly if they knew and were assured that those dollars were going to additional resources to help expedite the process. Just food for thought.
So just kind of clarification, so are you suggesting that maybe people who pay the permitting fees get expedited service, or it's just a voluntary?
Not necessarily. I think there's a ways to potentially means test the permit waiver process to help those who are really struggling on the island. And for those who are fully insured and those who can afford the process, again, based on the means test, I'd have to think about how you'd propose the means test. But there are, I'm sure, a number of people that would be more than happy to pay, knowing, here's what they would want to know. They would want to know that those dollars were going to the permitting department and they were going to additional resources to help expedite the process and to keep the process staffed at the professional level that you need to function accordingly. So again, the purpose of the waiver was always to help those who are really struggling, not necessarily just to hurt your ability to function. So I'm saying there's a potential opportunity for nuance there, and I would give that some thought and make a recommendation to the council. I would be open to it.
And just for the record, my understanding is that the way these departments work, as the town manager said, is the permit fees do go towards that task. They don't go into the general fund.
That's correct.
That's the way. So that's not by our operation. That's by, I think, the state law.
And that's fine. And I think, again, I think the will of, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but the will of the council was to help those folks who are in distress as they're trying to turn their lives around and put their lives back together. There are people on the island who are fully insured and are in a better position. And that how to calculate that means test, I don't have the answer to that, but I'm just saying that some food for thought, particularly if you're trying to get additional revenue for that department. I just think there are people that are okay paying those fees. We've heard from a couple of them already, as long as those dollars go to your department and would help staff your department to the level that you need to do to expedite and to proceed accordingly.
You know, I also think there's a bit of a double-edged sword here, because I think people are really trying to do the right thing. I mean, they know they need their permits, they know they need this whole cost estimate, but there's also, because of that, there's also going to be a lot of frustration on the timing. So when you're looking at, you know, where is this money going to come from? I mean, I understanding Rob Peter to pay Paul and paying it back. I think we have to do everything possible to keep this flowing, and the communication of it. People don't know where anything is, and I don't know if there's a weekly update that can be given from the building department. Maybe that goes on the website. Just, you know, here's what happened today, here's how many permits were cleared, here's our backlog, whatever it may be, because the questions and the rumors are flying like crazy, and it's just defeating all the goodwill.
Any other questions for Stephen? Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Steve. A couple of just odds and ends. I do have a meeting tomorrow with a retired HR professional in the area. I don't have to tell you that the vacancies that we have, we need to expedite a process. We want to follow the charter in terms of posting positions and do all that, but we've got a lot of work ahead of us. I'm still, with Amy being out, I haven't had a chance to get with her. I'm not sure I understand the pay and class system that the former manager used. You know, I may suggest that we bring someone in fairly quickly. The only way you'll recruit and hire good people is if you pay a fair and competitive salary for the position, and I can't figure out what we're using. So that's another project that I'm looking into. I'm expecting a proposal from somebody, a pay and class study somewhere in the $10,000 range. I don't know enough. I haven't gotten with Amy and made sure that I've been given a full explanation of how this 5-step seniority-based system that Roger used, works yet. Still trying to figure it out. I know a couple of, and I'll finish, I hope, with this, that there's a town hall meeting Friday. Again, Director Guthrie's in town Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I think, and Friday evening at 6. I believe it's going to be in this room, town hall. So I know we're getting word of that out. I'll be here. I'm not sure what will be on the agenda, but I'll be here. We'll see how the town hall goes. Also, one of the most important programs that's available to you after a storm is called the hazard mitigation grant process. I learned on the call that there's $500 million. We got, in the work that I did in the Panhandle, every grant we applied for, we got. And you want to, you compete within the county with all the other municipalities in the county. I'm not sure how they're going to rack and stack these projects, but things like a city hall, a lot of environmental restoration work, your water and sewer system needs. There's a lot that can go into that, and we have a very short time to. So what I would hope is at the meeting in January that we would come back with suggested projects for that grant program, and then get to work getting them done. The mayor's heard from the county that that deadline was flexible because it scared the heck out of me. It's not normal that the hazard mitigation apps would all be due within 3 months of a storm event. Sometimes it takes a year or so to really figure out what you want to do. But we'll have to ramp up on that grant, and there's tons of other grants that are out there, and we just don't have anybody on staff. That's a lot of organizations have a whole separate grant writing capability that we do not have right now. And that's enough for me, Mayor.
In the grant writing, is this something that we could get contractors, or we could outsource? This?
Back to John's throat to choke, that possibly through the disaster recovery solicitation that we do, that there would be grant writing service there. John's assuring me that everything we need can be had through that process. And my concern is that obviously it's going to be at least another month before we'll be back with a recommendation on that company, and it could take 2 or 3 weeks to get a contract in place. We could be several months away, and hazard mitigation's due in less than that. So I don't think I can wait for this disaster recovery consultant to be on board. Now, when the state disaster recovery people get here later this week and take over for Tidal Basin, I'll be right on top of them first day. Here's the half dozen things I need help with. How can you help? See where it goes. And by the way, I don't know if he's in the room yet. Keith Wilkins, my partner in crime here, is on the ground. Someplace he will spend the week here helping. And so when you see him, say hello.
Chris, you said something interesting that I had not heard before. You say in this tent, this Friday at 6 o'clock, Director Guthrie is going to host a community meeting?
That's my understanding. Mayor, is that correct?
Well, technically, we're hosting it. He's going to be here to answer questions along with FEMA, our staff, basically like the first one, but it's going to be here. So anybody has questions for our staff, for Director Guthrie, for FEMA, pretty much anybody that has questions that want answered, people will be here that day to answer them.
That's great. And is there a formal presentation, or is it going to be just people will be available to answer questions informally?
My guess is it's going to be a formal, because they asked me if I would moderate. I don't know if that was a good idea, but yeah. No, so I'm guessing it'll be like similar to the first one, where if you're in the audience, you can ask the question, and the person will take it that it's directed to or can answer it the best.
And so for the folks here on the island, if they have a problem with the feds, with FEMA, with the state, county, town, this is a good opportunity to come and talk to someone in person?
Correct. There's also, I believe Jennifer has it on our website. You can go and see who specifically is going to be here. So anybody that you have a question for that's in that agency, they'll be able to answer your question.
That's great. Thank you.
Is that meeting going to be streamed so people don't actually have to show up here, or how is that going to work?
We'll have to ask Jennifer. I don't know that we'll be able to stream it, but if you have questions, maybe you can reach out to one of us to ask specifically. If you can't be here, I'll be more than happy to ask the question for you. If someone else doesn't ask it,
right.
Jennifer, or send them to Jennifer. Maybe Jennifer, you can compile, or somebody can compile a list of questions that people have if they can't be here, whether they're up north or they just physically can't be here. We'll do our best to get all the questions answered that we can.
Mayor, Keith walked in right after I introduced him, so if you haven't met Keith Wilkins, he's here on site.
Good to see you again, Keith. Do you have anything else, Chris?
No, sir.
Any other questions for the town manager? None?
Town manager, this is a very abstract question, but I don't know where else to ask it. The FP&L person was here earlier, but as you go down, someone just reached out to me and I experienced it personally this weekend, but as you go down, obviously we're all working through challenges, but as you go down to Stero Boulevard, there are a nice spattering of street lights. Obviously we got a long way to go, but as you go down Old San Carlos, like down to Wahoo Willie's, it's really dark after 5:30. Didn't know if you see the FP&L rep, if they could just put 1 or 2 street lights on Old San Carlos, that would be, in a perfect world, which we don't live in, that would be great.
I don't want to get into this one. We had a long discussion. What started the conversation was more about what the end result would be in terms of turtle-friendly lights, and the confusion about what's been installed and how long it'll be there, and will we be turtle-friendly when May rolls around? I think that's an ongoing conversation with FP&L and street light, but I don't know what the plan is, to be honest with you. And I'm not sure. The mayor, do you have any?
Yeah, essentially the lights that are there now are just temporary lights that were put up for safety. They're obviously amenable to putting more lights, so we'll reach out, staff, Scott or Chris or I will reach out and see what they can do about getting more lights, because I noticed the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
It's a little dark.
That's fine.
This is a conversation I've had some time ago, trying to encourage them for putting up temporary lights. Why not put up temporary amber lights? They claimed that FP&L, they weren't available in the time frame that constituted emergency lighting. But one thing that's pretty obvious, if we put up white lights now, and when turtle season comes around, not only are the white lights cause a problem, but there's most of the buildings that shielded the light from the beach are now gone. So I think if we don't get lights in by the turtle season, we'll have a very dark Estero Boulevard.
They're fully aware of that. They understand the challenges ahead. They understand that we need to protect the sea turtles. These lights were specifically just temporary for safety to get put up and get, as you can see when you go down to Estero Boulevard, not all the lights are on. So not all of them are working. They're still working towards the fixture that has made it through the testing to get into the tariff program, so that's still ongoing. They're saying it might be a couple months yet, so they're still working on it, but we can't have it dark. We got to have a light. Go.
I'm a one-guy operation. I have had this same contract with 4 or 5 cities and counties. The agreement that I passed out was, it's not perfect, and every attorney that looks at an agreement has their ideas, and I understand that. It's the insurance requirement that's probably got. I don't have $2 million worth of general liability. He's asking me to suggest that y'all waive that. He says he puts it in every agreement that you sign. If I was a bigger company, I'm sure I would have that. I can probably go get a quote. I have no idea what that would cost, but I've not had it. I haven't even had a chance to talk to the league, who I assume your general liability policy is with, and what coverage as your interim manager I have or don't have. So it's, we can just keep plugging away at this contract. You've already, your finance folks have already paid Keith and I for the month. As long as we get paid, I'm good.
I looked at your contract, and then I looked at the one that John sent back. I don't know if my colleagues have seen it, but I had to literally stop reading on page 12, because everything was redlined, everything was crossed out, everything was redone. So I was really trying to keep up. And after page 12, it just, to me, I was concerned because we were told that the contract looked good, there'd only be a few minor little changes. And then when I saw that, to say I was dumbfounded would be an understatement.
The substance of the contract that was provided to you by Mr. Hawley and Mr. Wilkins is the same. It's been moved around, and language, as I think everyone said, is tweaked. The only area that, and I don't even want to say it's an area of disagreement, is, as I explained to Mr. Hawley, as a general rule, whenever we enter into a professional services agreement with any consultant, architect, engineer, professional manager, we would normally provide for minimum insurance requirements. And I've made it very clear to him that I come here today and ask if you all want us to waive that at the staff, we will, and the contract's done. And there's also some indemnification language that they asked to be tweaked. You know, there are, I would not be doing my job if I didn't say that, God forbid, there were an issue, there will be consequences for not having that insurance, those insurance provisions, but it's within your discretion to waive.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, and I understand that you've got to do your job, but part of my job is, and our job is to make sure that things are moving seamlessly. So this was supposed to be done weeks ago, and it's still not done. In the time that we're at, we don't have time. We have to move swiftly. We have to have things done. So if we're being told that this will be done on a certain day, we expect things to be done on a certain day. And the fact that we're now 2 weeks later and we're still talking about it, I understand that you have to do your job and you have to protect us, but we needed to come a little quicker. And with that, I'll let my fellow councilors opine as to the indemnification part.
Again, to be clear, we're 1 week behind where we had hoped to be, and I just need direction from you all to waive those provisions, and we're done.
John, I have a little consulting business that I started when I came down to Fort Myers Beach, and some of my clients require liability insurance, some of them don't. My question to you is, in terms of exposure for the town, I believe, I can say this safely, we've selected Chris and Keith because they have really a lifetime of public service and integrity in their records. I guess my question to you, John, is if they're acting in good faith, does Florida, like other states, have a good faith exception? In other words, if they're acting in good faith and everything's proceeding, I guess what I'm asking you, John, is particularly with our insurance with the Florida League of Cities, and so forth, what's the exposure for the town if we waive the liability insurance requirement? Because I think that would help us make our decisions, because I'm not terribly concerned about these gentlemen from an integrity standpoint, but I'm just curious as to what your thinking is in terms of how you went about that.
Thank you for the question. I think the best way to explain a potential situation where this may come into play is if, in the course of performing the professional services provided for under the agreement, either Mr. Wilkins or Mr. Hawley are unfortunately involved in a car accident, someone gets hurt. Under normal circumstances, if we had our standard insurance requirements that we have for other consultants, that their insurance would be what the injured person would look to, and which the town would look to for coverage. In the absence of that, it would be potentially our liability because they're working for the town.
But John, if they were actual town employees, the town would have covered that liability, correct?
Yes, but they're not.
Well, they're not, but they're acting as town employees.
Well, ultimately, the point I'm trying to make is that's ultimately going to be an issue for a court of law to decide, because the insurance is not there and there will be liability. What's the limit of the liability? Hopefully, no more than the statutory requirements under 286. I'm sorry, it's not 286. I think it's 250 per occurrence, 350 cumulative. They just increased the cap the last legislative session.
And not to get into too much granular here, but would their personal auto insurance not cover part of those?
They're asking for that to be deleted. Then we can plug that in.
Sounds like we might have a compromise here then, right?
That was our concern, is that you know, we're engaging their company, and I didn't know if they had corporate insurance. If the individual then
automobile accident, I've insured my truck, if that was the question.
Yeah, and your insurance would be first pay, obviously, right? Your truck insurance. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that because they're in essence acting as town employees.
All right.
So we have a lot of contractors who work for the town. Like I'm looking, I see Chad back here. I think he's a one-man contractor. Does he have to have this insurance?
To be honest with you, I can't recall whether or not their employment contract. I don't know off the top of my head. I can tell you that as a.
Again, I go back to this. It seems like this has put us all in a tough predicament that we didn't need to be in. We're at risk now without the indemnification. Had we known that, maybe they wouldn't be sitting there if they can't. If that's not something.
The indemnification provision that we generally have in our contracts is, and admittedly, it's more of a one-way where the contractor agrees to indemnify us. And what's currently in the contract at the request of Mr. Hawley and his partner is that there will be a mutual indemnification provision. That's what's in there. And then the insurance language has been, provision has been deleted. It's in its entirety.
So, John, just to make this more clear, like mud, you say there's a mutual indemnification provision in there?
Yes, sir.
That doesn't give you a peace about things?
It gives me greater peace than not having anything, but in a perfect world, as your attorney, I would like insurance. But this is something that is uniquely within your purview as the town council to hire your town manager, interim town manager, and in this case, you've selected to go with the corporation. If you tell me to, you know, that we'll go with the mutual indemnification and waive the insurance, we're done.
Well, at this point, I would be on board to get this contract done so that we can continue to move forward. They've graciously been nice enough to come in and help us. And this is one thing I think if we can get off the plate that we don't have to worry about, it would be a good step forward in my opinion. But I'll defer to my.
Are you putting that in the form of a motion, or do we need a form of a motion?
Do we need a motion or just consensus?
I would prefer a motion, just motion to direct the town attorney to finalize a contract consistent with the discussion of the town and the direction of the town council.
And Chris, are you okay with the discussion that we've had, or is there something that you want to add to this conversation?
I guess it's more if we do arrive at, and I don't think we're that able to execute the agreement subject to finalizing it today, or do you want it brought back to the meeting where?
Well, I think that there's been enough discussion. I think you two can handle it from here. I just want to make sure that it gets handled. Okay. With that, I will make a motion to direct the attorney to finalize the contract with Mr. Wilkins and Mr. Hawley. Consistent with the discussion we've had here today.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. Motion passes unanimously. Anything else, town manager? Town attorney.
Two items, Mr. Mayor. The one that's in the agenda and another one that is very similar to it. So pursuant to section 286.011 subparagraph 8 Florida statutes, I hereby request authorization of the town council to schedule and conduct an attorney-client session with the town council, town manager, and outside special counsel to discuss pending litigation in the case of Edward Rood versus Town of Fort Myers Beach, pending before the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, case number USCA 11-22-13126. That's the first one. And then also, same request, but the litigation is, let me get the case number. That's the wrong one. Sorry. It is Jameson versus Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, pending in the 2nd District Court of Appeal, case number 2D21-2723.
When were you proposing to have this?
We're proposing to have them either at the beginning or prior to the meeting, the regular council meeting scheduled for January 5th, 2023, or afterward, whatever is most convenient. We'll work with the clerk to decide with outside counsel their availability and schedule either before or after, as the case may be.
And do you need a motion or something to authorize?
Yes, I do need a motion on and approve and direction on each one.
And would you say the date and time one more time that you're proposing to do this?
January 5th, 2023, I think is our next meeting date.
It'll be before or after that regularly scheduled meeting?
Historically, we've done them before.
Okay.
You know, we can maybe try and start a little bit earlier, but 9 o'clock is usually what we do, and we schedule them in 1 hour.
Point of orders, we don't have a meeting on the 5th. Our
I'm sorry.
next meeting would be the 9th.
9th, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
January 9th. I apologize. So it would be January 9th, starting at 9 o'clock. And we'll schedule them in 45-minute intervals.
Okay.
9 o'clock is the council meeting, so.
Correct. So we would start the meeting. We will post the notice of the meeting for the regular meeting at 9 o'clock or as immediately thereafter the shade sessions.
Say,
Unfortunately, unless you want us to do them on the back end.
John, I think just for the public is used to us meeting at 9 o'clock, and I'd hate to have somebody come here at 9 and have to wait for
Right.
All right. We'll,
an hour.
we'll schedule them on the back end.
But the other side of that is we need a court reporter for the shade meeting. So it means you have your court reporter waiting for an unknown
Well,
time to
they
start
could just
the
come a
meeting.
little bit later, but yeah. So the court reporter is required for both of these shade meetings?
Yes, sir. As well as obviously the presence of.
I mean, that's the first
legal-
meeting we're going to have since the holiday break, and there's going to be a lot of pent-up business. I just hate to see 20 people from the public show up and have to wait an hour and a half before we get started here.
We'll work with the town clerk to schedule it afterward as best we can.
Is there a reason we can't do it before then? We have a M&A scheduled for the 12th. Could
You
it
would
be
have
after
to-
that?
You have to have it at a regular meeting, so it would have to be scheduled as a regular council meeting. You cannot do it at an M&P because you're not authorized to take action at an M&P. It's a workshop. If you want us, we can schedule a special call meeting for that date, again, subject to availability of everyone.
Well, so that was going to be one of my questions to you based on the recommendation from John Ward. He's going to have you that contract today to review for the new disaster recovery firm. That if we can get that back, well, we need it back before Friday, and we can get that out, we can do what, a 10-day procurement process, or what is the procurement process for that?
I would defer to staff as to what the time frame is, but based upon the last time around, I don't think that 10 days is unreasonable because the firms that have already submitted are just going to regenerate their proposals and modify them.
So if you can get that contract back to John to get it into that RFP, and we can get that RFP back, is it a potential that we could then call a meeting towards the end of the month to do the shade meetings, approve that RFP to go out and try to get it all done at one time?
I think the RFP has already gone out.
No. No.
Okay, so we'll be in a position to get back the proposals and submit them to you for action.
Okay.
We don't need any further council action to send the new RFP out, though.
Okay. Hold on, John. Okay.
You're talking about a timeline to bring
Got
it back
Okay.
for action.
So you can send it out as soon as John gets it back to you?
Yeah, I'll work with your procurement, but...
Okay, perfect. So is there a will of the council to have a special meeting, to have the shade meeting before the 9th?
Oh, what out of state.
What's that?
I'll be out of state.
Before that, okay. So there's that.
Yeah, I'm gone the 19th through the 29th
Of this
of December.
So then it looks like the 9th is going to have to be the soonest we can do it.
We'll work towards that date in the afternoon.
Okay. So I guess I'll make a motion to have the town attorney work with the clerk to schedule a special shade meeting. Do I have to give the case number?
In the Jameson versus Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida case, pending the Second District Court of Appeal 2D212723. That's the motion.
That's the first one. And what is the second? Oh, okay.
Well,
so the Jameson. Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, hearing no discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, passes unanimously.
The second one is pending litigation, the case of Edward Rood versus Town of Fort Myers Beach, pending before the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, case number USCA 11-22-13126.
I'll make a motion to instruct the town attorney to work with the town clerk to get that also scheduled on the January 9th meeting for the Rood case. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Okay. Anybody have any questions for the town attorney before we move on? Hearing none. Council members' items and reports. Vice Mayor Adderhall.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to, was the mail issue on your list?
Yes, it was.
You want me to defer then on that? Okay.
Sure. Yeah, we can.
I think just throughout the meeting, all of my other questions have been answered, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Veach?
I've mentioned this before, but I'd like us to start a discussion about Times Square. In my understanding, and maybe Jason can clarify this, that most of what the buildings that are gone in Times Square are all in a V zone, which is highly restricted. And there's two options that I've heard kicked around. One is to raise the whole Times Square up, put parking below it, and have everything built up, which of course you need to have, the property owners would have to be in coordination with it. The other thing that's been passed around is hardening the wall like TPI proposed some time ago. And again, I'm not sure the details, but I think that converts a V zone to an A zone to allow for dry-in development on the ground floor. I just think it's a complicated issue, and I think it's something that we should just start having conversations about with the businesses and with the town. Both these options would cost the town money, but I just think it's just good to have some clarity. I think uncertainty is very difficult when you're a businessman, and I think going forward in Times Square, I'd like to just have a discussion and see which way we're going to go with that.
Councilor Veach, is that something you would want to add to our upcoming MMP meeting? Maybe Jason can give us some insights as to what can and can't be done and potential paths we could go down?
That'd be great.
Okay. And everyone in favor of that? Okay. Can we add that?
And the other thing is, we talked about streetlights. A while ago we were talking, I just thought about this when they were talking about when the CenturyLink guys were up, is that we talked about someone wanting to put 5G cell phone towers on the island. Now that we're doing kind of a fairly significant redo our utilities, is this something that we want to have a conversation with the utility and see if this is the time?
Well, that was one of the items that was on mine. It seems we've forgotten about, and I can't remember the acronym for it, but the COVID money that came out. And one of the things that was in that could be a usable thing was widening your footprint, if you will, Wi-Fi, of connectivity. So I don't know if that's something that we can have the staff look into as a feasibility of using that. I know it was talked about using it for the stormwater, some of it for Bay Oaks. If that project's going to be on hold a little bit, maybe something we can adjust over there. But I'm certainly open to having discussion about expanding our technology.
Just real quick on that point, the council voted to direct that money in its entirety to the water and stormwater and/or wastewater rejuvenation project along Estero, and then obviously on the side streets. But I'm certainly open to having that discussion. I would say too that there was an attempt by a prior councilor to suggest restrictions on the 5G providers that were coming into the island, and I was assigned to have conversations with those providers, which I did at length. And I would just say, and I don't think this is the mayor's intent at all, but we need to be very careful as we approach the 5G issue with the providers, because it's been the practice thus far in Florida, and John's got more experience in this because he's got other clients, but based upon the conversations I've had with the major 5G providers in the state, is that we need to be very careful about the environment that we present to these companies. If we present a restrictive environment, they're going to go elsewhere first, because there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there. If we're very open and very laissez-faire up to a point with these providers, they're going to put us on their priority list. So it's certainly a great issue to talk about and explore further. But we've been down this road a couple times, and I just think we need to be mindful that there's a lot of communities hoping to get into the 5G game and get it to the front of the line. And one of the ways to do that is to be a very user-friendly community to come in and provide that service. And for those, and communities have a right to put up all kinds of roadblocks, and that's great, but they're also going to the end line. So just food for thought on that. And I know that's not your intention, Mr. Mayor. As we think about this, we need to think about what makes us most attractive to these large providers to come to Fort Myers Beach and put that 5G service here.
Thank you. Anything else, Bill? Nope. Councilor Woodson?
So we had talked a couple of weeks ago, and I just wanted to find out exactly where we landed on the container permitting approval process. I mean, is that in place now? We talked about having it in alignment with state guidelines and state licensing. But are people allowed to, is that permit process in place right now?
Are you referring to storage containers? Or are you talking about restaurant containers?
Restaurant, bar containers for serving liquor.
Jason, you want to come up and touch on this?
I'll let Jason add anything that he feels necessary, but when we looked into this issue initially, the food trucks were fairly simple because there's some state preemption, but also the same generally applies to the storage containers being converted or being used for field kitchens. Again, there's a state framework for permitting of those facilities. Assuming they meet that criteria and they have an eligible site, where the landlord or they own the property themselves, the direction that you all gave us was to go ahead and to allow them. It really is an issue of them having the necessary state licensing before they can come onto the island. And I'm not aware that anyone's provided that information to the town, but I'll defer to staff.
I do know that there's at least one, I think one that has reached out about purchasing one of these that has an ADA toilet in it. It's fully ready to go. They know that they have to go through the state requirements to get what they need. But I think what you're trying to get at, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is as a council, are we okay with that being put out there if they go through the state guidelines that they need to go through?
One kind of question, I think, when we talked about this before, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in order to serve alcohol, you need like a more permanent building, right?
Which is the container, not
The
on
container.
wheels. Yeah,
But
it
then
can't be
The
portable.
catch-22, I would say, I'm just trying to think this through, is that if it's considered permanent, does this mean now it has to be conformed to all the building codes, including flood elevation? Because you know what I mean? So if it's permanent enough for alcohol, does that mean it's permanent enough to be considered a new construction and has to conform to the flood elevation?
Ed.
So I think you're touching on a couple issues. There's the temporary nature of the units. That's something that we can handle on a temporary basis. The alcohol consumption is a little bit more tricky here at the beach because of the consumption on premise component that is in your land development codes. There's the one that's reached out already has approval for consumption on premise. They're going to put it on the same site. So that makes it easy on our side. It's the ones that want to put up these types of units and sell the alcohol that do not have a consumption on premise authorization from the town council. That's a code requirement of the land development code. There's not really a temporary process for that, so that may be something to discuss.
So let me ask you a question on that. So it's not an issue if they already have the consumption on premise and they're going to get this state trailer, whatever. What if it's not feasible to have it on the premise where they had it before? Is that a state thing? So say this person that wants to do this couldn't put it on the lot where they were before, but they got permission to put it on the same owner's lot somewhere else. Is that something that we can do, or is that something that would be regulated by the state because of the alcohol?
It's not a state thing, it's a local thing because of our consumption on premise requirements. So if it was a property that had never had approval for alcohol sales and consumption on premise, again, package is different. Package is retail. But if you're doing consumption on premise and drinking on site, basically opening kind of an outdoor bar, so to speak, if that site had never been approved for that, then we run into that challenge of that has not been authorized by the council as a site to do that. And obviously there's other things that come with that, such as noise, time, music, how long are they open. Those are things that the council is generally and typically regulated through the special exception process.
I'll just speak for myself. It's these businesses are trying very, very hard to get back and get open. In speaking, I'm not a restaurateur, so I can't speak to it, but in speaking to many of them, having a food truck is nice. It gets some of their employees back to work, but it doesn't necessarily generate the revenue for the town or for the business owner that's required to make it a viable business. And something like this, albeit small and temporary, could be a very good solution to help drive revenue, to help drive people back to work, to help get our economy going again. So I would certainly be in favor of doing what we can, obviously within the guidelines that we have in place and the state guidelines to allow them to do that should they choose to spend that money to go down that route.
But now a point you made is saying that people who cannot put the structure on the property that has the consumption on premises permit. So you suggesting that if someone has that, I'm not quite sure how that would work, because one thing we talked about before is that the license to sell alcohol is with the property, right? It's not with the business. So you suggesting if someone can't be on their property, they should still be able to serve alcohol somewhere else?
I'm certainly not suggesting anything. I'm just telling Jason my input as to if someone, my understanding is these containers are not cheap. They're a very lofty investment. So I'd be willing to bet a business owner would want to do all their due diligence, as this one person that we're talking about so far is doing. He's trying to do everything the right way. He's trying to make sure he's crossed all of his T's and dotted all of his I's, and he's doing the things that he needs to do. They just need to know whether or not we would support that being put on the location. I'm not certainly saying that you can put one in your front yard or your house and start selling booze out of it, but if you have a location that you can put it, that the landlord, if you don't own it, is okay with it being there, I certainly don't have any objection to allowing them to do that if it falls within what Jason has told us about already.
So in the example we're talking about, they have a site to put it on that has approval for consumption on premise. Remember, your consumption on premise is based on generally proximity to residential. So that's where the noise and hours comes into consideration and concern. But if it's a restaurant, and there's where the trick is, right? If it's a restaurant under our code, you don't need to get consumption on premise. If it's not a restaurant, it's primarily alcohol, then that's where it triggers. It's basically a bar.
And I'm certainly in agreement to help the businesses in every way we can, as long as we're not violating some state law as far as new construction or being able to serve off of the property where you have your COP license.
Good. I have confidence in our staff to be able to disseminate what they're going to be able to allow to do by the state. So I think they've got a pretty good handle on it. They're pretty cautious.
I would stand in support as well.
We're just looking for consensus then, or we're looking for something?
I think we've got enough consensus to give Jason the direction and staff the direction that they need.
Willing to move forward and remove whatever roadblocks we are putting up and helping support the businesses.
Great.
Yeah, and I'm totally in support of it, otherwise I wouldn't have brought it up.
Anything else?
Yep. So, did you say you were covering mail delivery? Okay. Beach Elementary, I understand there's a parents' meeting tonight at Skip One Seafood. Is that at 5 or is that at 6?
It's 6 to 7:30, I believe.
6 to 7:30. And is that the place that we will get updates, what has taken place between the last board or town, no, what was it? It was the school
board meeting, yeah.
School board meeting versus where we are today?
It's my understanding that the school board, or the parents, reached out to Ms. Patrica to have a meeting to discuss, concerns, options, things like that. I'm certain that the new developments we've all heard so much about will probably be discussed at length, and updates will be given. But it's not my place to give those updates, but I'm pretty confident that they will be discussing that.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Councilor King?
Yeah, Councilor Woodson had brought it up, I think, last meeting. Again, I remember something around the WEOC or whatever that was, submitting it to that. Having Jennifer do that, I thought, but I could be wrong.
Let me work on it.
Okay.
I don't have a report.
Along with that, I think, having been there Saturday, there were 2 restrooms that were brought in by a private individual, but there's no trash containers there as well. And that needs to be addressed as well as regular pickup if we're going to be having events there.
I'm sure, Chris, can you add that to your list of discussions?
I would kind of think too, because I was downtown and the town parking area, which is the old road, that it was cleared, but it was full. It still had hasn't been swept. I wonder if you can just also maybe start making an effort towards bringing the town parking facilities back online, because I was down one time and I saw that people were just parked all over Times Square, and people seem to be parking wherever now.
I don't want to speak for Chris, but I know that the staff is looking at replacing signs where they can replace signs and I spoke with Chad today, they're working on picking up as much sand as they can to get it filtered, to get it back out there. So it's in progress. It's being worked on.
Also, we've about Parks and Recreation. Where are we on parks and specifically, I guess, bringing Bayside Park online?
Well, I can tell you it's moving forward. We haven't got the final details yet, but it sounds very positive that the state is going to be helping us rebuild that park. They need to have their staff, the state staff, look at it to give an estimate of exactly what it's going to cost. They have a rough idea, but they want to take a look at it. But we'll have more of an update probably after Wednesday, I'm sure. But as of right now, I'm being told it's moving forward, and we'll have more information soon, hopefully.
One last item, because it was on the agenda, but we kind of glossed over it, I guess, or missed it. Advisory committee items, reports, and appointments. I ran into an individual, Jennifer Rusk, who wants her reappointment to the MRTF, the MRF. So I'm not sure if this is the place to do it or where, but I know hers was up at the end of October.
She has to apply, and it should come up.
Okay. Yeah, John, if I could, John, to our attorney, John, if someone is a sitting member of an advisory committee, they continue to serve even if their term is expired. Is that correct, John? As we go through this difficult period here until we can get everybody reappointed?
I don't believe so. No.
But I thought we actually voted on something that.
Going back to, I think that you all already submitted your applications for the replacement members.
I think for the other advisory committees, we went through LPA, but for the other advisory committees, for those folks who are currently serving, just because of the hurricane, we've not been able to renew or reappoint them. Would they continue to serve?
No, sir. If their terms expired, the appropriate thing would be to go through the process of reappointing them, so they can each advisory committee will then have the appropriate quorum.
Okay, all right. I just thought because of the hurricane, we might be able to make some exception. Yep. Okay.
Well, they're not meeting quite yet anyway,
That's
but
fair.
I think if they can, John, best practice is then to have them, in this case, fill out the application again, get it to the clerk. They can get it added to our next agenda item to be.
Yes, and historically, the clerk has handled that function for the town. So if that's the direction, I'm sure she'll follow through. I think the issue is the new members of the council have the right to appoint your own on some of the committees, if I remember correctly. If not, we go through the normal process of soliciting individuals, and then you appoint from those the individuals who submitted their application to be a member of the particular advisory board.
Anything else, Councilor King?
Well, I'm still trying to digest that. But I think I can do it afterwards. Thank you.
All right, I just got a couple of things. One, which I'm sure all of us were going to talk about, and we've been asked a lot about it, is the post office. I could tell you John and his team have tried very hard to get a response without a lot of luck as to what we're going to do. So I was going to ask, based on Councilor Adderhalt's, Vice Mayor Adderhalt's background, if you'd be willing to take on the challenge of reaching through your contacts at the federal level to see if we can get some sort of answer one way or another as to how soon we can get some mail service back on this island.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. I've done a little bit of research on it. We have one of our United States senators from Florida is on the Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs, which has jurisdiction over the U.S. Post Office. So I will be reaching out to his office and his committee staff and see if my goal will be to try to have somebody from the post office here at our meeting on the 12th of December to, at a minimum, give an update and get a sense of where we are and where we're going. I would just this is obviously a topic for a further M&P meeting, but just in the back of our heads as we look at a new town hall, obviously the post office on the island was pretty well destroyed. I would just, in the back of everybody's heads, just think about the concept of including a U.S. Post Office as part of our new town hall building, where we could share costs, and there would be a synergy there certainly between the two entities. And just food for thought. I don't know if the post office would be interested. I don't know if my colleagues would be interested, but there might be a synergy there between those two entities as we move forward. Just something to think about. But again, on the shorter term, we'll try to get somebody here for our meeting on the 12th.
Thank you for that. And I'll just give a little bit of an update on the FEMA meeting that we were at on Friday. To your questions earlier, Councilor Veach, the challenge obviously is the trailer being put in a flood zone. They obviously are aware of it. I made it very well known that I didn't understand the process of giving people hope that they are approved for a trailer, coming out and measuring for it, and then telling them you can't have it because you're in a specific zone on the island. So I didn't leave there feeling all warm and fuzzy, but I will tell you that they're trying to find alternate solutions. They're trying to find, whether it's the big hoteliers on the island, if they're willing to allow people to house in there. They're looking for anyone that has multi-unit residences that they can put people in. They're also looking as a last resort what they want. Some of the things that they want to do as a last resort would be to have those FEMA cities, if you will. So any local partners that would be interested in doing that, certainly reach out to them. You can go down to the DRC. They can put you in contact with the people that you need to talk to potentially be a person that can take advantage of that. both for your sake and for the people that need a place to stay. But they're still working on the trailer situation. They're still looking at a couple of sites on the island that could potentially work. As we know, it's an 18-month program, and that clock has already started. So the time it takes to do things, obviously more places that are site ready to put people in, like a hotel or a multi-unit building if you have it, or if you have a site that has a place that you can put it that has sewer, there's a lot of tangibles and a lot of variables that go into it, but they are working on it. They know, and it's not just us, it's Sanibel's dealing with the same issue. Fort Myers is dealing with the same issue, so we're all dealing with the same issue. They understand it, they know our frustration, so they're moving closer, and that's the best information I can give you right now. But as I get more information, I'll certainly let you know, because we're constantly talking to them about it. And the last thing is the TPI and DeAngelis Diamond have presented to me to give to the town one of the original flags that was hanging at the overpass. So I have it. I forgot to bring it this morning. I was going to have it here. It's folded, but they gave us one, and then they gave one to, it's slipping my mind now, but they had two flags that hung up there. So we have one of the flags for the town. Just wanted to put it out there to my colleagues to help come up with an idea of what we could do with the flag. Something creative, something that will remind us, but in a positive way, that we're moving forward. So put your heads together, and staff, anybody who has any kind of ideas of what we could do with the flag. I'm all ears, and I'll make sure I get it to the town staff for secure keeping until we come up with an idea to use it for. But other than that, I think we've covered everything else. Anybody else have any more information they want to talk to? Anybody else have any? Nothing? Hearing that, I'll seek a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 12:05.